What's up? Welcome to the booth. Riley Knight alongside Dr. Simon Gertzen. The practice has been open and consulting hours begin, ladies and gentlemen. We are just about ready for our second set of quarterfinals here at Pro Tour Ixalan live. Coming at you out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. I can't contain my excitement. It's time to head down to the feature match area right now, see how things shake out in our second set of quarterfinals. Hello, my friends, and welcome to live coverage of Pro Tour Ixalan. Riley Knight alongside Dr. Simon Gertzen, the Pro Tour champion, in the booth. And on your screens, geez, we've got some hard-hitting heavyweights today, Simon Gertzen. We're going to kick things off, of course, with the man, the myth, the legend, Mike Sigrist. He's hot and sicker than your average, ladies and gentlemen. There he is on your screen. And I tell you this, if you don't know who his opponent is, now you know, because it is Samuel Ihlenfeldt. There he is, playing at his first ever Pro Tour. Simon Gertzen, his first ever Pro Tour, and a top 8 finish for him as well. Not too bad.
No, that's already super impressive.
Going to kick things off now with a root-bound crag. We're off to the races, ladies and gentlemen, with quarterfinal number 3 on your screen. Mike Sigrist, ChannelFireball, his team, they've done exceptionally well across this weekend, Simon. And Ihlenfeldt has really put Tower Games on the map as well.
Yes, and Mardu Vehicles as well, because there weren't too many Mardu Vehicles pilots that were as successful as him.
Bit of a blast from the Pastorino here for Ihlenfeldt, because yes, indeed, motor vehicles a favoured strategy of yesteryear, but it's had a pretty quiet run so far. But Ihlenfeldt is here to shake things up good and proper, as we see Long Tusk Cub hit the bin. Won't be large for, won't be small forever. It'll be dead for a lot longer now, actually. As a Bowmat courier comes down, look at this little electric tomato. Look at this, mate.
And an artifact to pump his team, so very efficient use of his early turns.
Inventor's Apprentice getting in for a couple here, the Nerd Ape, as some people call it. But Whirl of Virtuoso is going to be a nice speed bump here for Sigrist.
Something we've seen all weekend is that these decks, especially the aggro and mid-range decks, they just trade blow in the early games, and it's so crucial to use these first 3 turns of mana.
Looks like Ihlenfeldt is using his mana very, very efficiently indeed.
Trigger. Yep.
And Ihlenfeldt now committing further to the board with an Ethersphere Harvester. And that's a nice way to buffer his life total. Would have served him very well against the mountains of the format, Simon.
Yeah, that's a huge deal, actually. You need to find ways to win those aggro matchups, and Lifelink is quite strong, as we've seen in the Mono-White Vampires deck lists.
Yeah, Wilson Hunter put up a great finish, actually, getting all the way, I think, to Xant 4, maybe Xant 5, with a very innovative list indeed. You're going to have to check that out on the mothership, ladies and gentlemen.
At some point, 1 match win away from top 8, I believe.
Yeah, he came really close, came within a whisker of it here. Smell on the breeze, didn't quite get there. We'll check in with him, of course, at the next Pro Tour with that strong finish. The tune with Ether here from Siggy, buffering up that energy count. And I think the story of the weekend, really, a tune with Ether, the secret's out. It is the absolute, it's the meat and potatoes of this deck. It's the reason it functions.
Yes, and that's kind of funny, because it's not the card that beats you.
No.
But when your opponent doesn't play it on turn 1, you feel relieved already.
No, it's the worm tongue behind the King of Rohan. They're going, oh no, just take this energy, my lord. Get this basic land.
Is Long Tusk Cub the Lord?
It is indeed. Well, yeah, this is the thing. We've got a rotating sort of top end here with Teamer Energy, 4-color energy. One of the really interesting storylines of the weekend has seen the innovation at the top end of these energy lists. Used to be 4 copies of Glorybringer, easy, set it, forget it, simple as that. But now we're seeing, Scarab God, we're seeing Sky Sovereign, we're seeing Vraska get up and about as well.
I really liked Piotr Grogovski's list. He didn't make it through the quarterfinals, but I thought this was some really cool innovation that we saw.
Ihlenfeldt now. He's got a couple of good options in hand. P and Alar, a nice bit of, more or less top end here for his list. Again, I mean, with the loss of the old Inspector, Thraben Inspector, of course, providing not only card advantage and artifacts, but also a little body to go along with it. This is why Mardu Vehicles has really suffered.
Mardu Vehicles lost a lot of cards, and the aggro decks of the format are very streamlined, very consistent. There's actually not much reason to play a 3-color aggro deck when you can play mono red, mono white, mono black, and you never have to worry about your mana.
Ihlenfeldt takes to the skies here with this 3-5. Going to knock Sigrist around some here. And the follow-up play.
Using these 3 for Pia.
P and Alar. And you can hear how clearly Ihlenfeldt communicates. I got the chance to stand behind him yesterday, Simon, and I have to say the pressure certainly mounted towards the end of his win-in against Reed Duke, and I have to say, unfortunately, it got the better of him. I hope that he is in a better spot moving into this top 8. He's had time to breathe out, to decompress a little bit, and hopefully, you know, now in this position, he's ready to really kick some goals.
I didn't talk to him, but from my perspective in the booth, he did seem a bit flustered, and he was also like talking a lot, giving, I think, away a bit too much information. If you're playing against Mike Sigrist, that's maybe somebody where you shouldn't do that.
Yeah, you want to hold all of that, all those cards to yourself, figurative and literal, of course. Ihlenfeldt going to draw a card. And his board a little haphazard. Not sure what's going on with that permanent placement up against Mike Sigrist, who of course has him laid out all in a. Oh, look at all those ducks in a row there. But no, I mean Ihlenfeldt. He looks like he's got his game face on. He's cool, calm, collected, Simon.
Yes, I think we're seeing a much stronger version than in the final rounds. Yesterday.
He's got that old Beyonce upgrade, Ihlenfeldt 2.0.
And Sigrist actually with a bit of an awkward start. You don't want to draw 3 of your roller virtuosos. 1 is usually enough.
Is a mess. I'm really sorry. Is there a better way for me to like organize this?
And you can see Ihlenfeldt's on top of it as well. His board is a mess. I certainly think that his game plan's coming together, even if it is on a bit of an old messy room there. Got the old floor drove happening. Certainly a character, this Ihlenfeldt. I know that he's won the hearts and minds of many Magic fans around the world. Very, very heartfelt celebration for him at the top 8 announcement. Ethersphere Harvester coming in once again. Sigrist, I mean, is he on the back foot at this point? He's suffering the life total deficiency here. I mean, how much pressure is he under?
I think he's on the back foot because he doesn't have any attacks here, and his blocks don't really line up too well. If you're looking at 2/3s against, for example, Toolcraft Exemplar, the evasive Ethersphere Harvester. I think Ihlenfeldt is dominating the battlefield right now. PR also has that activated ability to pump artifacts.
Now, unfortunately for Sigrist, of course, his hand is not looking very good here because, both these cards very high on power level. He can't cast either of them, Simon.
And we have seen this sometimes with the double red or the blue-black 5 casting goals. Something I want to mention is the triple block we see here. 3 roller virtuosos are blocking a single Toolcraft Exemplar, and that's because of First Strike.
It has First Strike. There are 3 artifacts on the battlefield here. And now Ihlenfeldt has checked his emails, and he's found 2 cards underneath that Bomat Courier. Now, correct me if I'm wrong, but the Toolcraft Exemplar, it retains First Strike, even though there aren't 3 artifacts, right?
Yes, the trigger has already resolved, and that's all that matters.
So we're just going to see the Traderino here from the Exemplar against the Whirler Virtuoso there. But of course, Whirler Virtuosos in multiples, definitely diminishing returns.
Yeah, effectively, as long as you have 1, the other ones don't add much. They are basically 2/3s that have already given you the energy.
So Ihlenfeldt cleans things up a little bit now. Checks in with the top of his library, thanks to this little dwarf that's come down here, the 3/1.
I'll put them both on the bottom.
Looks like they're both going below decks here for Ihlenfeldt. Veteran motorist, you've seen it. Well, I was going to say a staple. It wasn't really. There was much debate in days of yore about what the best 2-drop for the Mardu Vehicles deck was.
Yes, at some point when we saw Mardu Vehicles as the top deck of the format, then it was quite valuable to have it in mirrors because you can actually stack that ability to grow your vehicles in combat.
Yeah, you could chuck more and more motorists on top of the old helicopter as you were heading into the red zone there.
I don't quite know how that worked, but
they
just jumped on the ship.
I mean, as many, the more co-pilots, the better. They all reach across and grab the steering wheel together. Planes have steering wheels, I assume. Now, an interesting piece of technology coming from Ihlenfeldt, who is on some, I have to say, he's on some next level stuff here, Simon. We've just received the inside scoop here that Ihlenfeldt has written, "Breathe, you've got this," on the top of his life pad. I have a lot of respect for this fellow. I really do. I mean, we've said we've had a bit of fun today in the booth here, Simon, but I think we can all relate to Ihlenfeldt. Everyone's been in a position where there's been a huge amount of pressure on you. You've pulled through and succeeded, but there's work left to do. And I tell you what, a lot of people around the world are barracking hard for this fella, and they want to see him succeed. And he's obviously trying to back himself as well, and I really admire that.
And there's also a problem. If you relax too much and you're thinking, I've accomplished this top 8, you're not thinking far enough. You
Yeah.
you have so much more to win.
You've got to find that balance. And I tell you who's going to have a much better time finding that balance is Mike Sigrist. He's been here before, Simon. He knows his way through these treacherous waters. He's won these, he's got his way into PT top 8s before. He's had a lot of success at the highest levels of the game. This guy's come to play Magic, and he's come to do it very well.
You know what's funny? Mike Sigrist knows better how hard it is to make the Proto Top 8 than Samuel Ihlenfeldt.
Actually, yeah, Ihlenfeldt's on 100. He's like, this is very easy. This game's very easy. I've made 100% of the... I mean, well, these people talk about the Pro Tour being hard. Well, easy game, mate. Now, Sigrist continues to have some mana issues here. His hand is got some good options if he can ever get to them, of course, but those 4 lands aren't doing him any favours. Even Chandra is out of reach thanks to the fact he doesn't have double red.
And it is quite rare that you end up with 3 uncastable cards after you started with the turn 1 attune.
Yeah.
That's actually quite unlucky.
Yeah, the 4-color... I mean, we've seen 4-color mana bases in the past thanks to the fetch lands of Cans of Tarkir and this sort of thing. But this 4-color, the mana base, I mean, you do pay a cost, but it has come together in most cases. Here we're seeing Mike Sigrist kind of suffer for it. Oh, here he is, Ihlenfeldt. Give us it, mate. Oh, we love you. Good on you, big fella. As the judge gets answering a question here, Ihlenfeldt's certainly enjoying his 15 minutes of fame. Could end up being a little bit more than 15 minutes here, Simon. He's certainly putting the screws on Mike Sigrist. And one thing I think it's worth noting here, from a gameplay perspective, I mean, you know, Teamer Energy, 4-color Energy, huge target painted on this coming into it. But I want to point out that Sigrist has got 3 dead cards in hand, and he's by no means out of it. He's not sort of struggling to keep his snoot above water here. He's definitely in the game. This shows the power of this deck.
Yes, and even though he drew pretty poorly and the 3 Whirlpool choices weren't adding much, it's still, these 1/1 flyers are quite relevant. It's difficult to attack into them without losing your creatures.
So an ongoing discussion on the table there is some kind of error seems to have been made there, and it looks like both players missed it.
Sometimes it can be a bit confusing to keep track of all the energy counters, or maybe there was something with the land.
Yeah.
Didn't quite catch that.
Yeah, there's a lot going on in these games. I mean, throughout this entire Pro Tour, we've seen, because, Simon, of the familiarity that many of these players have with the format, we've seen some very, very deep and complex interactions and board states because there's a level of expertise. So, there's no issue. They're just having something confirmed here, and now that it's all been resolved, looks like Ihlenfeldt is going to be able to move on with the game here.
So one thing
Sigrist
I wanted to mention is the card upgrade and how important it has turned out to be in this Pro Tour. The big question going into this event was, how important are artifacts going to be? Because if you're just trying to win Teamer Mirrors, or for example against Ramanab Red, you don't really need to be able to destroy artifacts. In this top 8, if you're facing Motor Vehicles or Godfarer's Gift, you are very happy to have multiple copies of a Braid in your deck.
People have been skipping on it recently, but with things like Mardu Vehicles, things like Godfarer's Gift in the top 8, I mean, you're going to have been rewarded for playing that Hour of Devastation instant there.
Mike is only playing 1 Abrade in his main deck.
Oh, dear.
And that's a big difference to some lists that are playing 3.
Yeah, it's 2. It's two entire copies different.
Difference is 2.
The difference is exactly 2. All those years of studying mathematics have certainly done well for both of us here, Simon. And a big attack here for Ihlenfeldt. He's not looking to muck around. He wants to stamp his authority on this match very, very early, getting on the front foot, swishing the Willow around, and taking the question to Mike Sigrist, who, tragically, drew a Spire Bluff Canal for the turn. So, out comes another little Thopter here. Ihlenfeldt going to take the opportunity to have a think about it. Now, he, in hand, has got an Inventor's Apprentice, but that doesn't mean that he can't play the game here. He's already played it out here, in fact, for the turn. So he's certainly taking his time to think about this.
I think he's just evaluating his options regarding Pia, or he just wants to, make sure that he is aware of everything that's going on, even if it's Mike's turn to act.
Many confident players, Shota Yasuoka amongst them, Luis Scott Vargas, another player who plays at lightning speed, and you are within your rights when you're playing against expert, pro-level, players here who do play very swiftly, to just tell them to chill out, calm down, because I need the time that I need to get through these board states, not processing information perhaps as quickly.
As long as you're playing at a reasonable pace,
yeah.
Nobody can force you to play outside of your comfort zone. That's important.
Well, unless you're Gabriel Nassif, then you generally can get through 3 games of Magic without too much of a worry.
this once.
We're going to see.
And I will pay one
The
life
Scrap
for
Heap
the
Scrounge
green
benefit
team,
from the activation of Pianala here. So Ihlenfeldt continuing
and an
to dance
energy
down the
to
wicket.
pump
It looks like the
this
Ethersphere Harvest is also going to get this party
and
started.
I'm not going to pay to give it lifelink.
Pia is being used smartly here, just distributing her activations to make sure that if Mike is holding, for example, that Abrade, that he still takes the maximum amount of damage.
Now he has taken a huge amount of damage. He's been knocked down to 2. Ihlenfeldt, we heard, did not give the Ethersphere Harvest a lifelink. Wasn't interested in any kind of funny business with that. Obviously looking to preserve that energy total here. So Sigrist, I would say, the door closing pretty swiftly on him here, Simon, to end this game profitably for him.
And that's a game that we don't really see energy have very often. Basically, just failing to do what it's meant to do.
So Chandra goes upstairs, powers out a Servant of the Conduit, and it's back to Ihlenfeldt now. But you would think with his opponent on just 2 life, there's blood in the water here for the Sharp from Minnesota.
No, Mike is going through the motions. Sam does have to attack here and find that win. But of course, with a maximum of 3 blockers on Sigrist's side and 4 attackers, Sam should see this onboard victory.
So Ihlenfeldt powers up the
Let's crew the harvester.
Harvester here. We don't need to be. He's commentating his own game. We don't need to be here, Simon. We go to lunch, mate.
Virtuoso can't block. You might just be dead on swings.
He's putting the suggestion out to Mike Sigrist, and Sigrist actually agrees with his diagnosis here. He is indeed dead on board to Ihlenfeldt board, and you can tell this young fella is very, very happy to have claimed the scalp of Mike Sigrist in game number 1, but it's not over just yet. Of course, we've got plenty more games coming your way out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. We've got to go to a break, but stick around because on the other side of it, we might check in with Manfield Matignon. We'll see how things shake out in the feature match area here at Pro Tour Ixalan. We've enjoyed your company so far. Looking forward to it as this tournament continues. We'll see you back here live in just a few moments.
Looking for a place to hang out and play Magic? Head to your local game store this and every Friday to play Friday Night Magic events. Get more info at magic.wizards.com/FNM. Looking for a challenge? Magic Online offers monthly limited and constructed events which lead to the yearly Magic Online Championship. Download Magic Online at mtgo.com and start earning the points you need to enter.
Welcome back to the feature match area here in Albuquerque, New Mexico. Pro Tour Ixalan is unfolding before your very eyes, ladies and gentlemen. You're in the booth with Riley Knight, and alongside me, it's my good friend and colleague, Dr. Simon Gertzen, the Pro Tour champion. And of course, before the end of today, another Pro Tour champion will have joined your ranks, Simon, and I know you're very excited to find out who it's going to be. We're going to head over to our back table now. You can see Seth Manfield there bouncing up and down like a kid on a pogo stick. He's ready to get underway with his next game after picking up game number 1 against his opponent Guillaume Matignon. This guy, a French superstar, former world champion, I would say here. And he's got that toothpick game happening as well, so that's some very strong stuff from him.
Yeah, we actually have a really interesting matchup here. The energy decks have been struggling in our top 8 so far, but I really like the Sultai energy matchup against Jeskai approach by Matignon.
Yeah, you mentioned that you thought that Manfield might be ahead here by a country mile, and I have to say, unfortunately for Seth, he doesn't share your optimism. I got the chance to catch up with the member of Team Genesis, and he said he would be happy to steal a game in the first 2 unsideboarded games. He felt like it was that unfavourable, but you've got a different assessment, and I know that Winding Constrictor is another card that's going to make it harder for Matignon. That's why it's being censored. But your thoughts on this matchup, Simon?
Yeah, so first of all, the fact that pre-board games are more difficult for Seth is the fact that he does not have a way to interact with Approach of the Second Sun. So if he doesn't have a draw with a lot of pressure, then Approach of the Second Sun, cast for the second time, can just end the game. However, the way things shape up, we have full deck lists here, and of course the players have as well. They have been testing this matchup. Now, Guillaume Matignon is going for an interesting strategy with his deck list, in that he uses only Settle the Wreckage for board control.
0 Fumigates.
0 Fumigates, and this is something that a player like Seth Manfield, of the caliber of Seth Manfield, can exploit, and maybe we'll see that in the upcoming games.
So early turns here, sort of just fiddly farting around with cards like Opt, Long Tusk Cub, a good start for Manfield. Now, an interesting dimension to this Sultai energy deck. We've seen Timo, of course, a fair bit in the feature match area throughout the weekend, but Sultai piloted by Manfield, much more aggressive, Simon. Looking to go a bit leaner, a bit meaner, a bit lower to the ground here with cards like Winding Constrictor and what have you, and much more an aggressive deck.
Exactly, and you're actually happy to not have Harness Lightning in your deck in this particular matchup.
Yeah.
And even Whirl of Virtuosa, while it can be good against control strategies because it creates multiple threats, it's not something that puts on the pressure like this draw does. Winding Constrictor and Long Tusk Cub, this alone threatens to take over the game.
And just to give you a sense of how aggressive Manfield is looking to be, how much he's relying on, 2 and 3 cost creatures, he's playing 4 copies of Blossoming Defense. Really, obviously, very worried about point removal, the cheap removal cards that dominate the format, Fatal Push, Harness Lightning, and so forth. And he's looking to contest that strongly.
And that's something that's really nice for him, because he wants to cast his 2-drops on 3, which also plays around Censor.
Yeah.
So he has basically the double backup in that case.
Censor-proof, Harness Lightning-proof at all. It's all coming up Manfield at this stage. But for the fact that Matignon is hitting his land drops, he's able to interact as well. Now, does Manfield have a response to this commit to memory?
A second Blossoming Defense would be huge here, but he doesn't have it.
Unfortunately not, no. It looks like his hand is set up a little bit more to contest creature decks here with Hostage Taker, Fatal Push, and, Walking Ballista, Colourless Fireball. It can go to the face, but obviously at its finest in creature mirrors.
And this is the reason why, the main reason why game 1 is, or game 1 and 2 in the top 8 is unfavorable. You do draw dead cards. Fatal Push, Hostage Taker, even Walking Ballista are not the cards you are looking for to draw in this matchup. I also believe that Seth is having issues with his blue mana. Doesn't have any at the moment. And Guillaume has just recently found white sources. So that's actually a problem if you are relying on Settle the Wreckage to control the board. You do need those 2 white sources.
So Manfield getting the pickaxe out and going down to his personal howling mine here in the form of Glint Sleeve Siphoner. It's drawn him an extra card already, paid for itself, little 2-1 here. And it's also got in for some damage. This card's great when left unchecked, especially in the face of a control deck here.
Yes, and something that Seth can do, and that goes back to what I was saying about Settle the Wreckage, because there is no fear of Fumigate, he can actually play Glint Sleeve a Siphoner just to draw cards and never attack with it.
Yeah, this is the important thing here. A Wrath like Fumigate will clean up everything, no questions asked. But Manfield is going to play around Settle the Wreckage expertly by not exposing the value creatures he needs to stick around to something like Settle. The other important thing to note here is just how juiced up these cards get by Winding Constrictor. Glint Sleeve Siphoner gains 2 energy a turn rather than the 1, meaning that it's more or less paying for itself. And the amazing thing about Long Tusk Cub, of course, is that thanks to the Winding Constrictor, it gets 2 +1/+1 counters and gains 3 energy every hit. But Approach of the Second Sun, the marquee card for Guillaume Matignon, does not have a second one in hand. 7 points of life, a nice buffer for him.
And if he had the second copy in hand, this game would be over. Because in game one, that's in the unsideboarded games, that's not something that Seth can stop.
But let's look at Matignon's hand here. As we see, he does have 2 copies of Settle the Wreckage, which are uncastable right now, Simon.
Yeah, and none of these 3 cards actually dig him deeper to the approach. So we might see a game where Seth has a lot of time and knows exactly when Guillaume is threatening to win the game. And he has to, at the same time, navigate the Settle the Wreckages that Guillaume will be representing.
Yep.
So that could be quite interesting to watch.
Interesting little dance as we dig ever closer to the approach of the second sun. That copy, of course, 7 cards deep. Keep a close eye on that. Matignon does have ways to get there faster in his deck. Principally, I would say one of the most sort of the novel ways here is with Search for Escanta.
Yes, however, that's something you really want on turn 2. And I think also improves Guillaume's deck significantly if he has it on turn 2. Here, I think the cards he's most looking to draw are additional copies of Glimmer of Genius, or just Torrential Gearhulk to flashback the one that's already in his yard.
Manfield peeling cards off the top of his library like a fiend here, thanks to that Glintsleeve Siphoner. As we mentioned, personal howling mind here for the Genesis player. Genesis putting up the numbers this weekend, Simon. One of the best performing teams when it comes to constructed.
Yeah, not a big surprise. They have some of the best constructed players in the world on their team.
That's right, Brad Nelson, BBD, amongst others, and of course the man himself, Seth Manfield, former player of the, former world champion, I should say. Walking Ballista comes down. 2 counters thanks to the Walking Ballista.
Oh, and that's the reason why we still don't have an untapped blue source. But Guillaume is on 9.
Yeah. He's in big trouble here. He's got to find something quickly here.
He found a Harnessed Lightning off the top, so in this situation, he's holding 3 instants, 2 of which he can cast. So he's threatening Harnessed Lightning and Settle the Wreckage to punish attackers. This is also the first card he's drawn since the approach of the second sun.
Now, Harnessed Lightning is easily answered by Blossoming Defense here. And we probably will see Seth Manfield snap that off. Yes, indeed, Blossoming Defense there. Made an impact in Modern, of course, in Modern Affinity deck, Infect decks before they bit the banhammer of Gataxian Probe. So Manfield unable to pay the energy required for the Glintsleeve Siphoner this turn, it seems.
And this is the key turn where Seth is threatening lethal, can set up lethal with an attack, but he doesn't even have to expose all of his creatures to Settle the Wreckage. We might even see him play extremely conservatively and just attack with a single creature.
So, Walking Ballista comes down now. Cast X equals 2, so it gets 3 counters. Winding Constrictor winding its way around this battlefield, chucking around +1/+1 counters.
So that means Guillaume is already on a virtual 4, because there are 5 counters in play at the moment.
Very difficult to interact with it, of course, once it's on the battlefield. And even a disallow doesn't help much because it can only counter 1 activation, and that's not efficient.
You're usually not winning games where you're disallowing Walking Ballista activations or even, Ramina Bruins
if they're all taken off at once, that'd be a different matter entirely.
Yeah, if the card was just worded differently.
Yeah. But as it is, it's just nickeling and diming away, 1 point at a time, as those sausages get flung across the battlefield here. And Manfield in a pretty decent spot, you'd have to say here. Although Matignon just has to hold on. That approach of the second sun inches ever closer. And here we see, once again, Simon, a conservative attack from Manfield.
Yeah, and this is exactly what I was talking about. There was 0 chance that Seth attacks with 4 creatures this turn. It's just not necessary, and B, you would be running into exactly the card we see here.
Settle the Wreckage comes down, and not too much wreckage to settle here for Manfield. He'll be happy to pick up a couple of extra lands. He's got cards in hand to deploy, Rogue Refiner, 2 copies of Hostage Taker, which is pretty much just a 4-mana 2/3. LSV mentioned that its role in this matchup is to be sided out as quickly as possible. Certainly concur with that. So the old double path to exile here.
You can see that Seth did the math and knows that he's still threatening lethal next turn with the remaining attackers. So that's why he decided to expose 2 creatures this attack step. I am wondering if Seth didn't resolve the trigger, the attack trigger.
No, it was on the stack.
Okay.
It was on the stack when Matignon chose to cast that card. They are well and truly Gonski here off the battlefield. And it's back to Matignon. What can he find? He cycles 1 card deeper.
So
Place your
that's
fortress, settle the wreckage.
that's the 3rd card he's drawn since approach of the 2nd side. And you can see how difficult it is to actually dig towards that card if you play a naked approach, if you don't have Ascanta in play, if you are not holding a Glimmer of Genius.
So, is this the turn for Manfield? He's only drawing 1 card this turn, unfortunately for him. He's used to snagging a few more after that Glint Sleeve Siphon has done its work here.
So, of course, it depends on what Seth is holding here. But something I would like to see, for example, is an attack with the larger Ballista. Because if Guillaume takes 3 damage here, you are threatening lethal. And that means you're basically asking Guillaume to kill that Ballista, if you can, or just lose the game.
So, we know, of course, that this toothpick-wielding crony does indeed have 1 more copy of Settle the Wreckage in his hand. How likely is Manfield to play around the 2nd copy?
Very likely. Extremely likely. There's just not a big risk to not playing well.
So Matignon's hand is forced here. He does play Settle the Wreckage. There is more wreckage to settle here. Manfield now. He can put 2 counters on one of these walking ballistas thanks to the Winding Constrictor. The snake doing work once again.
He was 1 mana off lethal here, actually.
Yeah, with the double activation. But Matignon still playing the role of Indiana Jones here. Snakes. Why does it have to be snakes? As we see Winding Constrictor power out another +1/+1 counter, the bonus one here. And Matignon going to be knocked down to 2 here, Simon.
Very likely, yes. Seth is valuing damage more highly than getting more basic lands.
Tap basic lands, yeah. And when your opponent's on 2, when there's that much blood in the water, certainly the way to go. Now,
You were on 3?
Yeah.
Okay. I thought you were only at 2.
so Rogue Refiner buffs up Seth Manfield's energy reserve in addition to his hand here. Now, a Glimmer of Genius digs him 2 cards closer, or 4 cards closer, really.
And that's huge, because it does mean that he is threatening to approach next turn.
Bottom buff?
Yeah.
But he's going to put them both on the bottom. He hasn't found the interaction that he needs. Approach off the top and a commit to memory.
So,
But it's not enough, because we've got 2 lethal attackers from Seth Manfield. The American takes out game number 1 and game number 2. 2 on the trot here, Simon. He's only got to pick up 1 more in post-sideboarded games.
I think Seth is just a little bit too pessimistic.
Yeah?
That's just... I think if you look at the deck lists, this interaction with Settle the Wreckage, if you know exactly what your opponent can do, I like Seth's position here a lot.
Well, we're going to chuck it across to our front table now. Mike Sigrist and Samuel Ihlenfeldt. Ihlenfeldt, of course, bit of a blast from the past from him, as we said. It's Madu Vehicles up against the 4-color energy list that has been making headlines throughout the week, of course, preceding this tournament. Certainly made a strong showing this weekend. Energy strategies running roughshod over the format. But Ihlenfeldt has come ready to hustle and tussle. And maybe even bustle, because he's done very well indeed. Top 8 finish for him. Game number 1 against a titan of the game. Mike Sigrist, a member of Channel This team has done exceptionally well. I think they'll find themselves, if not at the top, certainly in the around the top tables of the team series so far.
They are extremely likely to be the #1 team after this Pro Tour. There are match results in this top 8 that would put Genesis on top, but I believe that Seth would have to win the whole tournament, and Mike would have to lose early on.
So Ihlenfeldt getting things started with a Toolcraft Exemplar, and Longtusk Cub is the second creature to this particular party.
Combat. Trigger.
Yeah.
And we can see a clear attack here, offering the trade for Sigrist. I mean, attacking with the 3-2. What are your thoughts here, Simon?
Yeah, I mean, you are not looking to block Longtusk Cub with a 1-1. So obviously Ihlenfeldt wants to be as aggressive as possible. The question is not whether Samuel wants to attack. I think that's obvious. It's always the question, how aggressive can Mike be? Because he is the mid-range deck, But sometimes Team Energy just runs over even the most aggressive opponents.
Oh, yeah. We see these ferocious 1, 2, 3, 4 curve outs with some of the most efficient creatures in the format, Simon. And Long Tusk Cub certainly a piece of that puzzle, moving up to Rogue Refiner. Then, you know, things like Bristling Hydra all the way to Glory Bringer, or Scarab God now is the flavor of the month. And even up to 6 with Vraska.
Yeah. If you just play a Bristling Hydra next turn, you can easily raise a Heart of Kiran. Maybe you are holding an Abrade to make sure that it's not a long-term problem. Harnessed Lightning, Whirl of Virtuoso. You have a lot of ways to stem the bleeding.
Ihlenfeldt's going to commit to the board further here. He's got a hand with quite a few options within it. Looks like we'll see another Toolcraft Exemplar here.
We'll go to combat.
And powering up the Heart of Kiran now. Makes the keys in the ignition, and off he goes, taking to the skies. The trade here for the Rogue Refiner, not a bad one for Sigrist. It's already done its job.
We saw here the nice synergy between Toolcraft Exemplar and Heart of Kiran, because you have an artifact in play, it gets the bonus, and then you can still crew the Heart.
Yeah, it requires a couple more pilots on deck here than, you know, the Smuggler's Copter of previous times. Once that got hit by the Panhammer, the favoured replacement was Heart of Kiran. It certainly does a great job. I mean, you know, on attack and defence as well, it can really get the job done. And as a 4-4, it's a very quick clock indeed. And Sigrist already down to 13 here. But he's off to a much better start, and I can see this Bristling Hydra in hand. Are you putting things in Sigrist's way right now?
I'm a bit hesitant because I don't think that
a very audible mull to 6.
that Sigrist will have the aggressive potential here. So if he wants to really dominate the game, then he needs to be attacking every single turn. And with the life totals at 13, 18, he has to be a bit cautious about that.
Sounds like they're going to have to wind things up in the feature match area there. It looks like we're just our energy is just too hot to handle here, Simon. They can hear us down there, unfortunately. So they've got the headphones on. I mean, we do get a lot of questions about this, and we can certainly answer them for you. We've got a viewing audience in the hall right now, Simon. The people of Albuquerque have descended on the convention center here to come and watch all the action live from the Pro Tour, and this means that the coverage now is being spewed out live. They can hear that your dulcet baritone massaging their eardrums, Simon. But of course, the players in the feature match area, we don't want to give them any kind of advantage or knowledge as to what's going on in the broader state of things with the gameplay. So it means that they've got those headsets on. And
I'm relatively certain that it's easier to turn down the TV than to make you be more quiet.
Oh, look, that debate will rage on. Certainly my volume knob is a little bit harder to find than the one on the TV.
And now we see actually one of the classical problems for the Temur decks. And it doesn't have many problems, but evasive threats is something that if you don't happen to draw your Whirl of Virtuoso, can be something that is hard to deal with and is also difficult to come back from, because you have all these mirror breakers like the Scarab God or even Vraska, but you cannot deploy them when you're under pressure from a flying creature or vehicle in this case.
No, that's exactly right. And going to the skies is something that the Temur Energy deck or the 4-color Energy deck does have a little bit of difficulty to. You know, they don't have a long runway. The planes can't really get up in the air. The exceptions to that, of course, cards like Glory Bringer and Whirl of Virtuoso, one of the ways to hold down the skies. But no, you're right. Evasion, something of an issue here, and Sigrist certainly got his work cut out for him in the face of Heart of Kiran. But he's providing the beats. Beats by Siggy here, and they come. Ihlenfeldt's got to have a good old think about how he deals with this onslaught here. Member of Team Tower Games has certainly put his name on the map. As we've already said, it's his first Pro Tour, a top 8 coming his way after some tight magic played against Reed Duke in his win and in. And obviously a fan of the Is It Guild from Ravnica. You can see he's got it on his capski there.
Very good choice.
Certainly the second best of the guilds, there's no debate there. Zori's come down, shut him down every time. So, Samuel Ihlenfeldt, we've got the intel scoop. Tim Willoughby worming our way into the eardrums once again, letting us know that this is actually some tech, super secret tech, against the blinding lights of the feature match area. He has copied it off again of Mike Sigrist here, who is wearing a cap as well. Because, yeah, I mean, those lights shine bright. It's not easy living in the spotlight.
Big swing turn here, Whirl of Virtuoso, and you heard Ihlenfeldt say, that's what I didn't want to see. Because it means his whole game plan of winning in the air is just going to take forever now. And I have a feeling that Sigrist was already holding this Virtuoso. He just preferred to get his own beatdown on before switching into defensive mode.
Yeah, right. So he wanted to apply some pressure, get on the front foot, and then worry about fortifying the defenses afterwards. That's smart play from Sigrist, we'd expected from a player of his caliber. And Ihlenfeldt's going to continue this this aerial onslaught here with Heart of Kirin. And Sigrist does have a decent follow-up play as soon as he can get the mana for it. He's got a squillion billion energy. We can see these D12s being brought in. Lovely to see the D12s getting used. I've said this before and I'll say it again. One of the most unloved dice on the face of the earth. Obviously, Barbarian hit points and Great Axe is the only reason you'd be rolling these around. But it's good to see them getting used here in the feature match area for our energy reserves, which have blown out of proportion this weekend. Huge energy campaigns throughout the weekend here in Albuquerque. Unlicensed Disintegration looking to take care of this particular problem for Ihlenfeldt.
Yeah, looks like he's targeting Whirler Virtuoso. So Mike is debating how many Thopters he wants to make, which is a smart play because you're forcing your opponent to make a decision without perfect information about what's going to happen in the future. It does mean that Ihlenfeldt is choosing the most aggressive line here because if it gives Sigrist the option to play this more aggressively and use the Long Toss Cup to basically win the race here, and that's why he's thinking so hard about how much energy to pump into the Virtuoso.
It's a tricky decision to make, and we do benefit from players like Mike Sigrist having the spotlight shone on them in situations like this because there's so much to learn from these players here. And with three creatures on the battlefield, all of which have an activated ability that costs energy, we're going to see Sigrist forced to a decision point here, Simon.
And that's important to note because 3 creatures means that simply from a combinatorial perspective, there was a lot to think about.
So 3 Thopters is the final verdict from Judge Mike Sigrist here. And he finds an attune with Ether. That's going to find him another land to get him a little bit close to Vraska. And he's got that piece of interaction in Harness Lightning as a 2-of.
And that's actually a pretty good draw because it means you now have 2 activations on Long Toss Cup. You have the protection of a Bristling Hydra, which you didn't have for a very short time frame there. And if Mike gets a mountain, he can even cast both Harness Lightning. So
and he does indeed get a mountain.
That attune might have been one of the best draws in his deck, even though it just got a land.
Yeah, no, and obviously, you know, when you're in a situation, you've got 4 lands, you've got cards like Vraska in your hand, you're looking to just draw lands, but in this case, attune was better because it...
Strictly better.
Strictly better. It did. It bolstered his energy count, and Mike Sigrist now in a great position. Looks like we're going to see one of these Harness Lightnings. Yes, indeed. Away goes the Nerd Ape. Inventor's Apprentice. Going to bite the dust, you would imagine, here.
And you might be wondering why Mike didn't get a Swamp, because he's holding Vraska, Relic Seeker. However, it's much more important to be able to cast both Harness Lightnings this turn or in later stages.
Oh, you're not going to kill? Okay.
Oh, he's just did it to gain energy. And then a Harness Lightning. Wow, look at that. He baited Ihlenfeldt into activating a Heart of Kirin here and then used the second Harnessed Lightning to take care of it. And with those 2 Inventor's Apprentices tapped, Sigrist was able to push through the final points of damage. Masterful play from Siggy here.
Very nice. Well calculated.
How about that? Gee, he got the TI-84 out of his back pocket and did the numbers there, and he's done incredibly well. A line that I don't think many people would have seen. And Ihlenfeldt, he spotted this sort of dangling bit of candy hanging off a tree, and next thing he knows, he's being hung from his ankles from a branch. Walked right into Sigrist's trap, and I tell you what, you're going to have to get across that once again. Watch that on the old replay here, because Mike Sigrist, he manufactured a win there. He conjured it out of thin air, Simon.
And that's why he needed the second mountain. Actually, the Harness Lightning deal 0 is a really high level play that we will see players make to have that extra activated ability.
Back over to Matignon versus Manfield now, and it looks like after sideboard, Matignon has chosen to keep the Toothpick in. It's a powerful option against Sultai Energy here. They're going to get things kicked off right here, right now. And the American with a 2-0 lead, and Matignon on a mulligan to 6 here, so things not looking good for the Frenchman. Is this going to be his Waterloo?
Once again, no Search for Ascanta on turn 2. I think this is the card he really needs to have a good game where he feels like he's pulling ahead from the start, from the get-go.
Now, Manfield is going to run this Glintsleeve Siphoner into a sensor here, and his hand is looking, it's a bit medium, to be honest, because as soon as that energy runs out, he's going to have very difficult time making a lot of plays here.
And that's the problem. Swamp Ether Hub is a risky situation. So we actually see that Seth is a bit flooded on Negate. Two of them in his hand, and a bit of mana issues. And the funny thing is that Matignon might board out both of his approach of the second sun.
Yeah, we've seen that happen before. We've seen him win games on the back of the Locust God, as we see Opt come down for the Frenchman here. And Manfield, with still a lack of a third land, he's not in a good spot. And Baral, the Chief of Compliance, works incredibly well with the counter spells that Matignon has. None in hand for him right now, as we see Harness Lightning pull for tomorrow and commit to memory. Harness Lightning obviously only costing 1 thanks to the Chief of Compliance here. And an attack for 1, look at that. Firmly sending a message here to Seth Manfield. Make hay while the sun shines, and Baral clips Manfield over the ear hole for 1 damage here. Has Manfield found the third land? This is a pretty critical juncture for him as the forest comes down.
And that's huge. If he hadn't drawn the forest there, I think the approach deck would have pulled too far ahead, independent of which win condition Guillaume is planning to use.
The lands keep flowing for Matignon. That's the position that he wants to find himself in. Pull from tomorrow and commit to memory remaining in his hand. A nice piece of interaction in the form of commit here. And Manfield, he's cooking a stew of a different color here.
That pull from tomorrow could be super relevant because Matignon needs to recover from the mulligan and all these 1-for-1 trades he's making. However, if Seth can just negate it, then Guillaume might run out of resources. So it's really important if Seth can afford to keep open 2 mana, given how limited he is on his lands.
So Matignon choosing to deploy this commit here, and it looks like Manfield is doing the big fake outer with blossoming defenses here, but obviously he doesn't have it. But this means he's going to be able to commit something further to the board here without any worry of a response from Matignon, who is almost completely tapped out. That commit only costing 3. And we know that Matignon holding the singleton pull from tomorrow, so he's effectively F6'd here. The Frenchman. Look at that poker face. No stranger to high-level Magic, nor indeed is his opponent, the 11th ranked player in the world, Seth Manfield from Team Genesis. A keen contributor to the world of Magic literature as well, as we see Matignon cast his pull from tomorrow. He's going to draw 4 cards thanks to Baral here.
Manages to dodge the negate because Seth did not have the 4th land.
And we see it very cannily cast in the main phase here, this pull from tomorrow. Now, the problem with this island being left up is that the Essence Scatter that Matignon drew freshly for the turn is active. Not only that, it is powered up further by the Chief of Compliance. Baral enables a loot for Matignon should he successfully counter something. Manfield's in a tough spot here.
Yes, very tough. This is definitely not the kind of game he wants to be playing. Things just haven't worked out for him. His opening hand, the early exchanges, how Sensor and Harness Lightning got rid of his early threats. Here we see again an interaction that he's not happy about.
Yeah, not at all. One mana answer to the Death Gaunt's Scavenger there. After Seth Manfield attacks with the Winding. I like that. Attack with the Winding. Just test the water. Goes down to the pool, dips his toe in, finds it a little bit too hot and retreats. But Matignon, I'm very impressed with Matignon here. I mean, he's the man for the job. Mulligan to 6, punishing one of the greatest players in the world. He's doing a great job of pulling a decent way ahead here, Simon.
Oh, absolutely. And now it actually becomes very, very difficult for Seth to turn this around because his deck is ultimately not built to fight a long, drawn-out game and compete with the card advantage of Jeskai approach.
And the further things go for Matignon as we see another attack from the Chief of Compliance. Come get some, he says. Back to Manfield now.
He wants to entice another attack by Winding Constrictor here.
Oh, yes, of course, because now we've got Torrential Gear Hulk ready to come and bust some skulls in the hand of Matignon.
We might actually see a situation where Seth is completely aware that Torrential Gearhulk might be in Matignon's hand, but if he believes he cannot beat a Gearhulk, then he will just attack anyway.
Yeah. Yeah, you got to go for it here. Pima the Rishkar, Rishkar Pima Renegade comes down, and you would imagine that's going to provoke a response from Matignon, and it does. Rishkar too good with the Winding Constrictor. Essence Scatter taking care of the Pima Renegade here. And no attack from the Snake, obviously in the face of the freshly summoned 5/6. And Matignon continues to hit his straps. He's firing on all cylinders, and Seth Manfield is not going to be happy about this because this is not how he drew it up.
No, and if I saw that correctly, Matignon actually drew a second Torrential Gearhulk.
Oh,
so
geez.
that's just not what the doctor ordered.
No, not at all.
Seth.
No, Seth Manfield has filled out the wrong prescription here, and unfortunately for him, his Long Tusk Cub is going to eat another counterspell as we see the commit part of Commit to Memory being flashed back there.
On the spell, not on the card.
And it's going to be tucked away into Manfield's library.
You heard Matignon say,
Yeah.
I target the spell. Because
Not the card.
if he would do it on the creature, the result would be the same, but Blossoming Defense would be relevant.
So, opt, drawing Matignon closer to the cards he's looking for. And he obviously knows what he wants. He's bottoming a card thanks to the opt here. And disallows a nice pickup with a Settle the Wreckage also as a nice little safety valve here. And Harness Lightning going to take care of the Winding Constrictor. Seth Manfield has seen enough. He scoops him up like he's at Baskin and Robbins, and that is going to do things for game number 3 here. And Matignon will be very, very happy to have picked up a win post-board. We already talked about the fact that Manfield fancied himself once the players had hit their sideboards here, Simon, but so far we have seen an inversion of Manfield's immediate prognosis.
Yeah, he didn't like his matchup pre-board, and he liked his matchup more post-board. But I think what actually happens is Guillaume makes his deck a lot better after sideboarding because he's going for the creature package.
Yeah, he brings in his Barals, he brings in his Locusts, gods, and what have you, and he was in a good spot to contest Manfield. They did a great job. And now it's time to head back to table number 1. Mike Sigrist against Samuel Ihlenfeldt, the veteran versus the rookie. David versus Goliath here, as we've seen already. And they've split the games so far, 1-1. These guys have hit their sideboards for the first time in this matchup. We play best of 5 here in the quarterfinals, semifinals, and finals. The entire top 8 played out best of 5. Playing for keeps, playing for all the marbles, playing for 50 grand in stone cold cash, ladies and gentlemen. The Pro Tour champion here in Albuquerque will walk away with very, very full pockets, Simon. A tune with Ether kicking things off here for Siggy. He'll be happy with that. Once again, we've talked about it being the glue of the format. It holds this deck together. So important, especially when you're playing 4 colors.
Yeah, it's if a tune and Ether Hub didn't exist, we wouldn't see 4-color energy. And I'm not even sure if we would see 3-color energy. Maybe we would actually have a 2-color energy deck in standard.
A tune. Real MVP here. Playing a pretty quiet role, but once again here, Ihlenfeldt on the front foot with this Inventor's Apprentice, this Scroungerino, making sure this little fella can get in for 2.
And here, this battlefield is a really nice example of how good it is to be on the play in aggro mirrors or aggro against mid-range games. Because Mike is already in the tank and has to consider if he can actually deploy a permanent or if he will be falling too far behind on the board. You can see him be very reactive.
Yeah, he's looking to control, take more of a controlling posture now as he's on the draw. I tell you what a weekend he's had, this guy. Mike Sigrist, I mean, you know, he was getting the daggers stuck into him all weekend as being the least accomplished member of ChannelFireball. He's certainly given him a taste of their own medicine.
That's the right answer, right? That's what you have to do.
Oh yeah, stick this in your pipe and smoke it, he said to the likes of LSV and Polo and Martin and all the rest of them. I've made the top 8. He's done very well, and of course all of those fellas on the sidelines cheering for this member of Team ChannelFireball. He's done exceptionally well. Ihlenfeldt, a name that you may not have heard of heading into this tournament, but certainly, as we've said, a bit of a crowd favourite. A cheeky smile on the face of this fella here. Ethersphere Harvester, the play for him. Critical card against Mono Red. It's done some work against Sigrist as well here. Way to take to the skies, which, as we've discussed, Simon, is a great way to contest energy decks.
Yes, and absolutely vital, these Harvesters and the Heart of Kirans, to do exactly that.
Walking Ballista comes down. 2 counters on top of it here. What's Sigrist having to think about? Looks like we're still waiting for a response from the member of Team ChannelFireball.
The only thing he has available here is an activation of Long Tusk Cup. So he is now deciding if it's worth it to activate the Long Tusk Cup in response, just to be safe that the Walking Ballista is not going to threaten it at some moment that's not opportune.
Just taking it well out of range.
Exactly, and that's actually more relevant if you're playing against control decks with Harnessed Lightnings or other damage-based removal spells. But in this particular case, it is absolutely correct to consider it.
Well,
Doesn't really matter.
seems like he's left it as it is. Ihlenfeldt, I tell you what, he wears his heart in his sleeve, doesn't he?
Yeah, but I am a bit surprised now by this decision to crew. I was expecting the apprentice to attack, because if Sigrist blocks and spends his energy, then you trade your apprentice and a single counter on the ballista for a Long Tusk Cup, which I think would have been a beneficial trade for Ihlenfeldt. Also, getting a creature into the graveyard has nice synergy with the Scrap Heap Scrounger.
Yeah, there's already a Scrounger in the bin, as you can see, for Ihlenfeldt here. Sigrist gets in with the Long Tusk Cup. No activation of its ability here, just bolstering his energy reserve. Finds himself with more energy than a can of Red Bull right now. We've got 8 in the tank, thanks to the Servant of the Conduit, freshly cast.
Yeah, let's take a look at Sigrist's hand, because he kept open 2 mana here, even though he could have deployed a Long Tusk Cup, but I think keeping up this Harnessed Lightning is absolutely vital.
Yeah, and Sigrist walking an interesting line here. I mean, we talked about him wanting to take a more controlling posture, more defensive posture post-board, and he's certainly doing that, although he's still able to commit some threats to the board. That Long Tusk Cup has remained more or less uncontested so far, and Sigrist effectively playing both sides of the field here.
And you do have to attack with it, because you do get that energy, and that's ultimately the vital resource that your deck is built around.
With 8 in the tank, he's certainly going to be happy with that. Ihlenfeldt with a measly 2, although certainly not as many energy synergies for the Moto Vehicles player. It's back to him now. See how he wants to navigate this turn, and we're going to see the Aethersphere Harvester woken up, this time by the Ballista, as you mentioned.
This time it's the attack that I would have liked to see. This time I expect the attack that I would have liked to see last turn.
Go to combat.
And we're going to see an attack here from, Botsky. Here we go. Ready to hustle. As both these cards get frisky. And Mike Sigrist not interested in blocking, and Harness Lightning's going to clean up the Harvester here. Although Ihlenfeldt might have something to say about it. What could he have, Simon?
He's holding a Heart of Kirin. He was just checking his card. He's losing his Harvester, but he's kind of upgrading it. And it's not a big deal that he only has 1 flying vehicle left, because it is a bit...
I do it for 5. So 3 plus.
It is a bit expensive to crew two vehicles.
Oh, I'm sorry.
So we're getting things sorted out now with the little bit of confusion as to exactly how much energy Sigrist spent here, but he's down to 6 energy after he gained 3 from the Harness Lightning, and then of course spent 5 to take out that Harvester here.
I actually saw a lot of players this weekend. They were just writing down life totals and energy totals on their life pad. I think that's actually really good to be absolutely clear about how much energy everybody has.
And even when they weren't themselves playing energy, I saw Pascal Maynard. He was on that next level tip as well, because he's writing down energy. He was writing down a written report of each game he played effectively. But he was really clear about the information at every step. Whenever energy went up or down or anything, he didn't shortcut anything. He wrote it down, and that's really helpful in situations where there's a little bit of ambiguity. You can get yourself and your opponent out of trouble by having things made very, very clear.
I'm looking forward to his tournament report after he submits his life total pad.
Yes. Yeah, that'll be it. That's you'll be able to see that on channelfireball.com. Just a picture of his life total pads throughout the thing, and you'll be able to read it all there. Channel Fireball, of course, sponsoring one of the most successful teams at the tournament. You can see the only player left standing from this team, Mike Sigrist, Siggy, as he's known to many. He's battling very hard. He's already got a couple of top 8s under his belt, and he'll be very happy to have snagged this one as well. Now, Simon, 6 mana. What could this mean? What could it be?
I think there's only a single card that costs 6 in Mike's deck, which is Vraska, Relic Seeker. And
time to seek, indeed.
I think she's found a pretty nice relic.
Down she comes, ready to go on the hunt. And the first order of business is to take out this Heart of Kirin. A little bit of cardio surgery here for the Relic Seeker as this heart is ripped out of its chest.
Oh, sure. Go ahead.
And Samuel Ihlenfeldt going to have a quick read of Vraska. One of the cards that people had their eye on heading into this tournament. It was, you know, a way for these 4-color energy decks to go bigger, go larger. And it's certainly done its work here with propelling quite a few people. I mean, at least 2 people into the top 8. Lugoski also playing it.
Vraska actually did a couple of things. It was a way to go bigger in the mirror, but also you got a versatile answer to a lot of the threats in the format that had been cropping up. So suddenly you had a main deck answer to enchantments.
Yeah, Anointed Procession.
Anointed Procession. You had a main deck answer to, or additional main deck answers to artifacts.
Yep, had enough of that rubbish. Get it out of here.
Godfarer's Gift? No, thank you.
No, thank you. No, thank you. I return it. Return to sender, unopened. Did you keep the receipt? Because I would like a refund. Now, the Relic Seeker's done good work here. Vraska has struggled to find a home so far in Ixalan Standard, but she's been cropping up more and more. I'm very happy to see this. I mean, we go back to the days of Elspeth Sun's Champion as a hugely impactful 6-cost Planeswalker, and this card's pushed, no doubt about it, but we just haven't seen a green-black deck.
And we know that creatures and Planeswalkers, they need to have an almost exponentially growing impact as their mana costs go up. Because otherwise, well, a 6-mana Planeswalker has to just deliver a lot.
Oh, she certainly does. She turns up with her arms full of packages ready for you. She protects herself, can get on the front foot as well, you know, creating 2/2s, but also just removes whatever permanent you need. I mean, you know, doesn't tussle with Planeswalkers, opposing Planeswalkers, obviously, but artifact, creature, enchantment, that's as good as it gets, really. And Ihlenfeldt certainly, with a difficult task ahead of him, he's got to contend with this new pirate captain. Look at those stripy pants. Geez, she's looking good. Sartorial masterpiece here for Vraska, the captain of the ship, of course. Really interesting character as well. I mean, I don't know how... I know you're a huge fan of the story, of Magic's story, of course, getting across it every week, but Vraska, a very complex character, and it's really interesting to read the way that she's developed, especially with her reunion with Jace, the Living Guild Pact, and certainly a really good way to go a little bit deeper on an angle on these Magic cards that, you know, isn't at the top of the radar for people playing competitively, but I don't know. I really enjoy exploring that.
Absolutely. That was one of my favorite parts of the story as well. But let's get back to the game.
We could sit here and talk all day about it, Simon, but we do have to continue talking about the game. You are right. Thank you for getting me back on track here.
Vraska is not dying this combat step, and that's a huge victory for Mike here.
Scrappy Scrounger comes back from the bin.
Even on defense, Long Tusk Cup is tricky to play against, because you just look at the energy reserve and you know if I act first, then the Long Tusk Cup is just going to grow and I will get punished. So Samuel decided that he would use the Ballista instead. So it seems like he did shoot down the Vraska. They were just a bit slow to do that.
So Vraska taken out of contention by that walking Ballista. And I mean, that, you know, that's a flavor victory as well. A Ballista against a ship full of pirates, I know who I'm backing there. So she falls to the briny deeps now, but Sigrist still has got a good amount of advantage out of Vraska there. He's got to be happy with that. An attack now with Long Tusk Cup. And the Servant getting busy as well here.
And that tells you how well Siggy feels about this current spot he's in. Ihlenfeldt actually drew a Canyon Slow, which is kind of a bad card, but at least you get a redraw. So he's not entirely unhappy about it.
I think there just generally should be more cycling lands. I think generally...
In all decks, or...?
No, just generally they should appear more.
Ah, okay. I thought players should play more.
Maybe players should play more. They should appear more. I mean, one of the hallmark advantages, or one of the hallmark positive things about Hour of Devastation was that lands could cycle, and you had better games of Magic as a result. I'd love to see, I don't know, uncommon lands that cycled or something like that as a bit more of a mainstay in Magic.
And of course, a deck like Guillaume's approach deck can take much higher benefits even from cycling lands, because depending on where he is in the game, he needs answers or mana sources. And in a deck like Martyr Vehicles, it's more like a free roll. You're playing one or two of those and just get an extra card every once in a while.
One of the hallmarks, of course, of the 4-color or Ultima energy list is the fast lands. You know, we've got Botanical Sanctums, Blooming Marsh, and that sort of thing, and that's really important. That's really important for these decks who are looking to make turn 1, 2, 3 plays. You know, often they will curve out all the way to 4, 5, whatever else, but so critical for them to hit those early drops. And as a result, we don't see cycling lands so much in these lists.
Yes.
Maybe one.
No,
or two.
you can't afford to.
No?
It's just too expensive, basically, having those extra tap lands. And Ihlenfeldt is deep in the tank here because he's holding Fatal Push.
I will pay a life. 13.
First, he had to decide if he wants to pay a life for it or an energy. And then he also had to decide
Combat.
if he actually wants to cast it now or maybe wait and entice Sigrist to pump, invest
Yeah, seems good.
a certain amount of energy first.
12.
I'm just loving special comments from Samuel Ihlenfeldt. You're in the booth with Riley Knight alongside me, Simon Gertzen, and of course our special correspondent from the floor, Samuel Ihlenfeldt, as well, with the special comments there. And that appetite for the unnatural, as Ihlenfeldt said, seems pretty good. Got rid of the Scrap Heap Scrounger, and Sigrist buffers his life total there, negating that attack.
And actually, Ihlenfeldt is rewarded here if he has a creature in his graveyard. I don't think there is one right now, but he will still be able to generate black mana with the 1 energy and the Ether Hub. Now that he doesn't have an artifact anymore, he wouldn't have been able to do so.
No. No, that Inventor's Apprentice only a 1/2 at this stage. And another attack here for Sigrist,
Take 4.
who takes 4 from this attack. Sigrist playing things pretty conservatively with his huge energy store. He's got 9 energy in the chamber ready to go. And his Hellbent as well plays out the Spy Bluff Canal. Mountain off the top for Ihlenfeldt, not what he wanted to see here.
No, he's really far behind here, and I like Sigrist's decision to not rush it because he can draw cards like Brother Virtuoso, and then he is actually happier to use the energy for Thopter tokens than to grow a creature that might potentially die to another Fatal Push or Unlicensed Disintegration.
And this is a good lesson for people to learn. This is a good sort of macro magic lesson to learn, is that the further you are ahead, the more conservatively you can afford to play. If you're behind, you need to take those high-risk, high-reward plays. You need to try to end games quickly or put yourself in situations where you could be punished, because otherwise you're just going to fall further behind. If you're ahead, you can afford to play conservatively. You can afford to just, play the ball as it lies and see how things go.
So almost like using variance as a resource.
Using variance as a resource.
We should trademark that, I think.
I think so. It's the Simon Gertzen and Riley Knight special. We could co-author it.
Yeah,
Split
that's
it.
50-50.
We'll split it. Well, no, we'll split it. Let's say 60-50. You can have the 60.
The larger half.
You can have the bigger half.
Gonna play.
Ihlenfeldt now. He's found a play here, and it is a Heart of Kieran.
It's a go.
And it's back to Siggy now. Sigrist. 2 cards in hand, both of them lands by the look of things.
Yeah, hasn't drawn particularly well, but he added a Rogue Refiner to his battlefield, and Samuel is on 7. I don't see much of a future here. The Heart of Kieran is giving him some hopes.
He can block. He can block. I mean, we know that Sigrist doesn't have an answer to it.
He wouldn't have. He would have been dead on board if he didn't draw that card.
Yes, of course. One thing that can't block, of course, is that little Scrap Heap Scroungerino there. That'd be too good. Coming back at instant speed and blocking? No, thank you.
Yeah, it would also be a completely different card. It would not be an aggro card. You could just play it in decks that are mid-range to block and block and block over and over again.
But it is going to enable a block here for Ihlenfeldt due to the fact that the Heart of Kieran is on the battlefield. We saw Vraska getting into the operating theatre, taking out the previous one, but a second heart has been regrown somehow.
This is an interesting attack that Sigrist is lining up here, because the fact is that Longtusk Cup is threatening to be a 7/7, which is lethal. Rogue Refiner runs into Heart of Kieran, but if you are exposing the Rogue Refiner to Heart of Kieran, why not also attack with the
servant?
Why not also attack with the servant?
Yes, now Ihlenfeldt priced into blocking this Longtusk Cup because, as you mentioned, it is a lethal attacker thanks to the number of the amount of energy that Sigrist has here.
Sigrist, I believe, just extremely conservative here.
Just a 5/5 long, just a 5/5 Longtusk Cub here. This evolutionary marvel has managed to stay alive in the face of that 4/4 there, and Ihlenfeldt with 2 cards in hand is going to need something very, very special indeed. Oh, what an attack! Look at that, getting on the front foot, and I like to see it here from Ihlenfeldt, going down swinging.
It's funny how if this was the Swiss rounds, we would just see a concession, but because it's the prototype 8, you just play it out. And
to the bitter end, look at that, blood all over the ice here as Ihlenfeldt shakes off his gloves, but it is Mike Sigrist who lands the finishing punch and snags himself a second win. Sigrist doing very well indeed to get his snoot out ahead of Ihlenfeldt now. It's time to head back to our our second game here between Seth Manfield and Guillaume Matignon. The Frenchman did manage to pick up game number 3 after Manfield took 2 on the trot before sideboard. We're going to check in and see how these players are going now. Got a player going down to 6, as you can see on your screens here. These players checking in with our spotters on the floor so we can get across what's in their hands. And Guillaume Matignon is down to 6. Ladies and gentlemen, unfortunately for the control play. Although he did win last time with it, Simon, with the mulligan to 6.
This time, however, he's on the draw. And that does make cards like Censor, in particular, much worse. So, and all his permission, effectively.
Well, as we get stuck in with our next game here of the quarterfinal, Seth Manfield versus Guillaume Matignon. Ladies and gentlemen, certainly a great pleasure to have your company live and exclusive from the home of Magic out of Albuquerque, New Mexico. Riley Knight alongside Dr. Simon Gertzen, the Pro Tour champion in the booth. And I have to say, it's been fantastic to have your company throughout this weekend. And we really do appreciate you sticking around through coverage of the top 8. It's great to have you along, because, of course, we've got a lot of stuff to get done before the end of the day, before we call it a day. We've got a Pro Tour champion to crown. We've got a squillion bucks to give away, 50,000 of them going to the player who walks out with a crown on their head, and all the power and the fame and prestige and glory that comes with a Pro Tour championship. A tune with Ether off an Ether hub for Manfield. What does that mean, Simon?
It does mean that Seth is not holding a forest, or wasn't holding a forest before that. It does, however, not mean that he doesn't have a lot of other lands. So if you're Matignon, you cannot expect him to be mana screwed this game.
Winding Constrictor coming down here. And this is going to really demonstrate the power of the Snake as Manfield is looking to continue his this energy strat. I mean, you know, it doesn't just give extra counters to creatures on the battlefield. It gives players extra counters as well. So that means that Manfield can pick up
so
extra
important
energy.
with the energy mechanic, yes.
I like Matignon's position, though. He's got a decent hand here as he's continued to draw some lands. Baral, Chief of Compliance, a second dead copy in hand, however.
Yeah, but I guess the looting ability of Baral actually also helps to get rid of additional copies. So that's not a big concern here.
Manfield with the attack with the Winding Constrictor, and Guillaume, he's calling it.
I mean, he has a second copy, so if he trades this Baral for a combat trick, Blossoming Defense, that's perfectly fine.
Well, Matignon, he's got a face like stone here. Hewn out of the very mountainside itself. He's not giving anything away, and Manfield happy to let the creatures bounce off each other. And now the Rogue Refiner going to gain 3 energy and a card for Manfield here. Constrictor already doing work. And he ships. Sultai energy, we've already mentioned the fact that it does take a more aggressive bent than some of its Timor or 4-color cousins. And I got the chance to catch up with Seth Manfield, and he said one of the reasons he played it, one of the reasons he liked it, is that it had even faster starts than Timor quite often. Even
faster, and if you have the Winding Constrictor, I think also more unfair. Because playing against Winding Constrictor and Long Tusk Cup together feels just almost unbeatable if you don't have the exact right instant at the right time.
Yeah, and with cards in the deck that are so synergistic, Long Tusk Hub, Rishkar, Pima Renegade, Rogue Refiner, you know, these Walking Ballista, of course, one of the most important cards in creature matchups, and the Winding Constrictor, especially in multiple, Simon, just pushes them over the top.
Note that Settle the Wreckage only costs 3 for Matignon. However, similar to Path to Exile, you're not super happy to ramp your opponent in the early game.
No, and I think it's funny. I mean, what's the opposite of diminishing returns? Increasing returns? Each Settle the Wreckage that you cast gets better than the last one.
Yeah, let's say Seth has diminishing returns
from each Settle the Wreckage? All right, certainly, as the wreckage only can pile up so high for Manfield, of course, because, as you mentioned, if you're settling on turn 4, you're giving your opponent a lot of basic lands, which, you know, is a bit of a liability. But as the game goes late, which is exactly what Matignon wants it to do, you can be settling your opponent, and they're going to have to settle for 1, maybe 0 basic lands once they've got a plan.
And Seth, in this particular scenario, he didn't really want 2 basic lands. He wanted to keep his creatures on the battlefield.
So, Matignon, he's continuing to do pretty well for himself after that mulligan for 6. Disallow. Harness Lightning, some interaction for him, as well as some lands, and he's going to be pretty happy with that hand. I mean, that's what you want.
I'm a much bigger fan of this Jeskai approach deck after sideboarding. It feels to me almost like his read on the metagame was Approach of the Second Sun is an insanely powerful card in game 1.
In game 1.
In this metagame, because Raman Up Red Teamer Energy, and these fringe combo decks are running around.
So, Duress is the play from Manfield now, and we see Baral, Chief of Compliance, snap off a trigger here for Guillaume Matignon. He gets to draw and then discard. And he, I think we can all put some pretty safe money on where what's going to be discarded there. Baral discarded to Baral. We do have a flavor judge incoming to check up on that interaction there, Simon. But so far, game will continue. The pace of play will continue. Really impressed with this. I mean, Baral, the Scarab God, coming in out of the board. Both of these cards maybe catching opponents off guard.
The Locust God, yeah, red.
Oh, sorry, the Locust God, excuse me.
Sure.
One of the few non-Scarab Gods
Yes.
At this tournament.
Yes, indeed.
No, that's not. Actually, we have other gods as well.
Well, we've seen Hazaret and the Scarab God have really been tussling pretty hard with Standard, but it's nice to see, you know, a bit of a George Harrison to the Lennon McCartney of the other two there. I'd say Ronus is probably Ringo Starr. No one's impressed by it.
Cousin him.
2. Guys, can we check like 13 for Guillaume and 23? Yeah.
So live total check there, making sure these players are both correct here, and it looks like Matignon is on 13 once we've got that all settled.
Yeah, that was the Rogue Refiner hit we just witnessed.
Yep, the 4-3 getting across and slapping around the Frenchman here.
And it's interesting. We saw this exchange of Duress running into Disallow, I believe. The Duress is not a threat you want to counter, but because it's threatening to take your permission anyway and give Seth Manfield all this information, you're basically priced into countering these discard effects.
Manfield does have a clock on Matignon here. It's one of those big ones you wear around the chain on your neck as well, because it's 4 a turn, and that's going to increase now with Death Gorge Scavenger coming down. Not a lot of other action going on for the American here. But I tell you what, Matignon also in a tricky spot. He's holding a pair of lands as well. And in this position, if both players have hands that look like just a pair of feet, you've got to favour the person with the board advantage.
Yeah, that's true. It's especially if this Death God Scavenger resolves, and that's what Matignon is now basically bluffing. He's saying, this is on the stack. Let me think about this.
Certainly playing the game here, the Frenchman, giving Manfield a thing or two to think about. But he's in a good spot. Former world champion, of course. Sniffing victory on the wind. Oh, smells delicious. Matignon now is going to have to find something, because once again, this board state of Manfield is looking to really put those final nails in the coffin here. What's going through Manfield's head right now? You've been in this position before, Simon. You've been in the quarterfinals of a Pro Tour Top 8. And, I mean, how are you feeling when you're this close?
Well, these players are basically just focused on what's happening in the game.
Is that right?
Yeah, they're not thinking about much else. It's even the toothpick of Matignon is more a way to focus and help him just be in the zone, be in this game. And Seth is going through the instants that are in Matignon's hand, and he knows that how likely it is that there is a Settle the Wreckage. He knows how likely it is that there is a Torrential Gearhulk, and all these things are basically in both players' minds.
So laser-like focus on the game in front of them, you're saying, Simon Gertzen?
I think, especially looking at Matignon, he seems extremely focused.
Yes, indeed. As the Death Gorge Scavenger comes in, it's going to exile that Settle the Wreckage. That's a great pickup here for Manfield, of course, because that can be flashed back with the Torrential Gearhulk. Obviously, Manfield came ready to tussle with Torrential Gearhulk. Appetite for the Unnatural in hand as well, and I think it's more or less the only target in Matignon's deck.
Yeah, it's this is something that happens when you have a lot of dead cards to sideboard out. You don't want your removal spells in this matchup that, for example, you don't want your Fatal Pushes. Even if you know that Baral is coming in, it's not something you're happy to draw. But these, I mean, we did see how Torrential Gearhulk basically took over the game. What was it, game 3?
No Gearhulk to be seen here for Matignon. He's holding Pull from Tomorrow and Essence Scatter. Seth Manfield. He's tying a ribbon and putting the bow on this match here. He draws ever closer to wrapping it up once and for all. All the toothpicks in the world can't help Matignon. He could have a fistful of them in his mouth and he still wouldn't be any close to winning here. Disallow. It's the exile zone thanks to Death Gorge Scavenger. Second time we've seen it activated here.
This is an extremely close game now because Matignon drew Pull from Tomorrow.
We're going to see him deploy it. Pull from Tomorrow for 4, thanks to the Chief of Compliance, Manfield. He wishes he had those negates from Game 3.
Of course, and so what is going on here is Matignon is facing lethal. So he will be forced to chump block. He wants to find a removal spell because
Hasn't found it.
He knows he needs to find something here.
He hasn't found it. Censor, Disallow, Essence Scatter, and a land in the hands of the Frenchman here as the Chief of Compliance hits the bin as well. As to comply with the rules, he was marked with lethal damage, and it's off to the graveyard with you, my friend.
And at the same time, you can see that Seth was not exposing all of his board because of the threat of Settle the Wreckage, because we knew that Matignon didn't have it.
Huge draw step here for the Frenchman.
Another huge draw step with Sensory Recycle.
Yeah. He can see a few more cards here.
So he needs to find Settle the Wreckage, and then he needs to hope that Seth attacks with all of his threats, because otherwise he needs to find Settle the Wreckage basically every single turn.
So, 2 cards off the top. 1 goes on top, 1 goes below here for Guillaume Matignon. He draws the card he left on top. It's an island. In hand, Disallow, Censor, a couple of lands. He ships now to Manfield on 1 life. Is this going to put Manfield into the semi-finals of Pro Tour Ixalan? He draws for his turn. An overwhelming force on the battlefield for the American. The former world champion, he knows how to win games of high-level Magic, and he's hoping to do it right here, right now.
And you can see the high-level play by Matignon here. He is holding Censor, Disallow, Disallow. He has nothing but a cycling of Censor. He is representing, however, that he has Settled the Wreckage. So he is hoping Seth only attacks with a single creature, and then he wants to Censor into a removal spell to live for 1 more turn.
Guillaume Matignon playing to every last percentage point here. But Seth Manfield goes to combat, attacks with 1 creature. Will there be a further follow-up attack, or is it the Death Gorge Scavenger by itself? We know that all of these are lethal. Manfield, however, has got to play around every card in Matignon's deck. Cycles the Censor. Has to find something very special on top, Simon. Doesn't manage to do it, and wrap things up for Seth Manfield, the semi-finalist now at Pro Tour Ixalan. He's done very, very well. Back-to-back Pro Tour top 8 appearances for the American, the former world champion, and he's found his way into the semi-finals of Pro Tour Ixalan. An incredible job from him and a big sigh of relief. And commiserations, of course, to fans of the Frenchman, Guillaume Matignon. Unfortunately for him, bowing out in the corners, but great to see him back at the top levels of Magic.
Great to see him back, and he had an uphill battle to fight there with full information for a player of Seth Manfield's caliber. I think open deck lists were a disadvantage for him.
Certainly, I think the fact that Settle the Wreckage wasn't the sort of the big surprise that it could have been in many other matchups. Certainly took the wind out of Matignon's sails. But Manfield, I mean, look, he's a world-class player and he's done very well indeed for himself. Member of Team Genesis, pushing his team further and further ahead here. But right now, it's time to head back to our first table. Mike Sigrist, Samuel Ihlenfeldt here. Ihlenfeldt at his first Pro Tour. Mike Sigrist at his 1,000,000th. Very much versus old versus new here. And once again, it's Ether Hub into a tune with Ether.
I'm more concerned about the start on the other side of the battlefield. Justice Spire of Industry and no plays. That could be very, very dangerous.
Well, let's have a look at what's going on in Ihlenfeldt's hand here. And Ether Hub, the only other land there. He's going to be able to make some plays here, Simon.
But he already declined to cast Inventor's Apprentice, wants to keep that potentially single colored mana that he has with Ether Hub available to him. He needs to play an artifact, have it stick, and then he will be able... Oh, there we go.
Sparring Advantage off the top. A nice one here for Ihlenfeldt. He'll be happy with that. It's going to ease the squeeze just a little bit here.
But in this case, it would be much better to have the Inventor's Apprentice already on the battlefield, I feel.
Well, Heart of Kieran the play now for Ihlenfeldt as it's back to Sigrist. Looks like we've got a Servant of the Conduit ready to come down. Buff up that energy counter, provide a little bit of extra mana for the American superstar here.
Okay. Ihlenfeldt's draw is developing quite nicely here because he has one of the key cards for the matchup.
What's that?
Heart of Kieran as the hardest hitting evasive threat that he can have, and he's keeping Sigrist very fair here, removing that servant.
So unlicensed disintegration, meaning that Sigrist is going to have to play a much fairer game, not being able to ramp up, and Sigrist with no play here.
Yeah, no Verlevoort shows. Oh, he does one, but he doesn't cast it.
Okay, he's obviously looking to interact here. Harness Lightning, double appetite here. Is a hungry, hungry boy, is Mike Sigrist.
That's an incredible hand in this matchup.
Yeah, it's pretty good, actually.
If
Toolcraft Exemplar.
Ihlenfeldt, I think, can be happy that he doesn't know about this hand because it would
it'd crush
just
him.
be... It's difficult if you know that you're up against a good player with a good hand and who's one game away from defeating you.
So, I really like this from Samuel Ihlenfeldt. Look at that. He didn't activate the Heart of Kieran. And this is the way to do it. I mean, even if your opponent has the most stacked hand, if you don't give them the opportunity to gain as much value as possible, I mean, you know, obviously the appetite still takes care of the heart here, but Ihlenfeldt was playing around removal there, and I think he did an exceptional job of it.
Against, for example, Harness Light.
Yeah, for sure.
And in these scenarios, you can really punish the 4-color energy deck because it does rely on the fact that it's using its mana every single turn.
Yeah, it is one of those decks that's very hungry. I mean, it's hungry on more axes than one. It relies on a lot of resources to come together. It relies on a stocked energy pool. It relies on 4 colors of mana being available at all times. And I mean, you know, it doesn't stumble hugely. Attune with Ether, the marquee card in that regard. But all the same, if you can get your opponent off balance, if you can tilt them slightly by not letting them play the game plan they want to play, that's how you're going to win games here. And Ihlenfeldt, I mean, he's dialed in. Look at this guy.
Yeah, I think he really just feels familiar when playing this motor vehicles deck. So for him, it's not about, is this the best deck in the metagame? That's irrelevant now that you're in the top 8. He just knows how to play this deck better than other decks. So I really like this decision by him.
So, Servant of the Conduit coming down. Sigrist leaving open that Harnessed Lightning here. He is looking to interact once again. On the draw, maybe looking to be a little bit more defensive, a little bit more controlling, Simon.
Absolutely. He wants to just make sure that his removal spells hit the right targets. And the funny thing is, depending on how Ihlenfeldt's draw shapes up, which targets are the right ones is different. Usually it's the vehicles, because that's just something that will kill you in the long run. Sometimes it can even be Scrappy Scrounger because you realize that's a 3-power creature that I just have to get rid of.
Well, any way you slice it, Sigrist has got the tools that he need to push this game further on here. But Ihlenfeldt isn't in a bad position himself. And Sigrist is going to have to dig deep here. Of course, he's the man for the job. He's been here before. 2 Pro Tour top 8s before this one out of 26 starts. So in terms of conversion, Ihlenfeldt certainly got him on the ropes. He's got his number 100%. But Sigrist, of course, one of the greatest players of the modern era here, and certainly justifying his position in this top 8 after a very, very strong performance in the Swiss. I think he topped it.
Yes. This is, I believe, first player after the Swiss against Samuel, who got in on tiebreakers.
Yeah, he just snuck in, the only X4 player to do so, and geez, he had the sweats going. He had the big sweats when Marsh was reading out the top 8, but I mean, you have to go back and see it. This guy was just beside himself with joy. Well-earned top 8 for him, as we've already said. He's already developing his fans around the world. He's done very well for himself indeed. He's putting on a spirited performance here in the face of a very, very powerful wizard indeed. Mike Sigrist, a worthy adversary. Ihlenfeldt certainly keeping to account. Veteran Motorist comes down now. Still struggling slightly with mana issues here as Sigrist looks now to commit to the board further here. As we hear his energy going up and down here like a lift. And his long tusk cub as well. He's looking to get on the board here, Simon.
Yes, and I expect him to get on the board with Thopter tokens. Even though they are more expensive than the +1/+1 counters on Long Tusk Cup doesn't match up as nicely, for example, against Veteran Murderers than the Thopter tokens do. And as we know, what's happening in the air with flying creatures is what has a huge relevance for the outcome of the game. So Thopter tokens is something that Mike will want to make anyway.
Wow, Hazoret the Fervent coming in just like that. She's got it super hazed apparently because she came into the battlefield tapped and attacking.
And that's a
Ghost of Saint Traff token here.
That's really something that can turn a game around.
Yeah.
Suddenly, Ihlenfeldt is going from a position where he was unable to deal damage to a board where Mike is forced to take very unfavorable chump blocks.
Yeah.
Just to keep his life total high.
I mean, he can buff this big fella here, the Long Tusk Cub, up to a huge proportion to survive the attack from Hazoret. But, I mean, this is the thing. When you're playing a red deck and when you're thinking about a card that can get you out of a tricky position, I mean, what are you thinking?
Yeah.
Of course, Hazoret.
And the thing is, it's not a chump block, you're right about that. The thing is, now you have a 6/6, but if Ihlenfeldt wants, he can just block that forever. So you've basically depleted your energy reserves for something that you might not have wanted to do otherwise.
Back to Sigrist now. Still got that appetite in hand, but it's not doing a huge amount against Hazoret the Fervent, who really goes against the plan of Samuel Ihlenfeldt. Usually, you know, he's on that Blink 182, all the small things here, but this is a much, much bigger thing.
Yeah, one of the trump cards in Ihlenfeldt's deck. Mike is still on 19, so he's not too concerned about the second ability on Hazoret that allows him to just discard cards for 2 damage.
But I mean, even as a blocker, I think Hazoret has come down and really twisted the fabric, the texture of this game around her here.
Yeah, that's what I think as well. And I'm actually curious now how things are going to develop, because there are 2 options here. Ihlenfeldt can just raise, and it's about, you know, both sides kind of having to produce chump blockers, or now use Hazoret as a defensive tool now that all the energy, or most of the energy, has gone into Long Tusk Cup.
Excuse me, who licensed this disintegration here? As we see, Long Tusk Cup.
Nobody.
No, oh, it was indeed unlicensed. So this is going to take care of the Long Tusk Cub here. It's going to ding Sigrist for 3 as well. But an appetite for the unnatural in response, and we're going to see 1 damage go upstairs here. So Mike Sigrist's life total going up and down like a 4th grader's yo-yo here.
And this play meant that Ihlenfeldt is without an artifact, so the extra 3 damage by unlicensed disintegration not a factor.
So losing 1 to the Ballista, but then gaining 2 from the appetite, but now losing 5 to the Hazoret. So as we say, Sigrist is under a bit of pressure. Hazoret has really begun to turn things around here for Ihlenfeldt.
This was really nice, I feel, because we had Ihlenfeldt force Sigrist into committing the energy into his cub, and then punish exactly that with unlicensed disintegration. So now Hazoret is the biggest creature on this battlefield.
So just explaining there that Ihlenfeldt did not have an artifact as a result, and that was why we saw Sigrist snap off that appetite. His hunger finally got the better of him, and the Walking Ballista was put on the menu there.
Top deck Ether Sphere Harvester by Ihlenfeldt. This is getting quite out of hand.
Wow. Yeah, Ihlenfeldt is edging ever closer here to forcing a 5th game between these 2. And what a story of David versus Goliath here. I really like the way that Ihlenfeldt has regained his composure. I mean, you know, we are spending a lot of time talking about this fellow and the way that he's approaching this from a psychological perspective at least. But we know that Mike Sigrist has a strong mental game. We know that the psychology of a player who has been here twice before. I mean, he's in a better spot, not just because of the cards in his hand or in his deck or whatever else. He would have just felt better as he got out of bed this morning. Whereas Ihlenfeldt, you know, we've seen him be a player who is, I don't like saying this, but like susceptible to the pressure of the game.
There's maybe an important factor here that also the best players of this game are susceptible to nerfs. And
Yeah.
they will maybe not sleep as well.
That's true. I mean,
others,
Seth
but-
Manfield was tweeting at 5:30 today saying that he can't sleep. But an interesting conversation that Sam Ihlenfeldt had with his teammates last night was he was having a chat with him. He's saying, listen, I'm going to go in there and I reckon, you know what I'm going to do? I'll just get up in his brain zone. I'm just going to get up. I'm going to play mind games with Mike Sigrist, and I'm going to outmaneuver him that way. And his teammates just looking, just folded up, just go, mate, come on.
What would you have answered?
Pull the other one. He's got bells on. I mean, Mike Sigrist, he's not inviting anyone to his barbecue. You cannot get up in his grill.
I'm going to use an energy to give it life.
But Ihlenfeldt's done very well indeed. All the same here. He's buffering his life total now with his Ethersphere Harvester.
Yep, 7, 16. Yes, that's what I've got as well. Go ahead.
And as you can hear there, 7 versus 16, Sigrist on the back foot.
Correct me if I'm wrong, but it seems like Samuel is getting more and more comfortable.
Yeah,
The longer this is going
This is
on.
what I'm saying. He's found his spot. He's in his lane. This
And
is just
not
another game.
just because the game is going better. I think
that's it. But no.
I think it's really just he's getting more comfortable with the situation, with the cameras, with the lights,
Yeah.
with the judges. You are surrounded by so many high-level judges and the staff, of course.
I keep coming back to this game the winning in that he played against Reed Duke, and theirs was the last table to finish. And I'm standing there as we walked over to this table to start, broadcasting it live, standing behind them, getting the cards in hands. The cameras are pointing out, judges coming over, and Ihlenfeldt, no joke, mate. He turns and he just goes, "Oh no, please, no, not now, please," like this. But he pulled it together, and he beat again one of the greatest players of the modern age in Reed Duke, and now he's here tussling as hard as he can with Mike Sigrist.
Will I be able to do that during sideboarding? Please, please, please. Okay.
And there's a really, really good energy down there on the table right now between these two players. You can see Sigrist here to play cards, and he means business. But, when they're sideboarding, they're having a laugh, having a joke with each other. Tim's down there letting us know that, these players have got a good energy going between them.
And there is a huge amount of mutual respect between Magic players, especially at the Pro Tour. And the top 8 is special for every one of them. Of course, you want to win, but it's not at the expense of your opponent's enjoyment of this very special day.
So we're hearing Sam really wear his heart on his sleeves. Ihlenfeldt is not hiding his experience today. And earlier you might have heard him say things like, "I'm just really happy to be here and to be part of this." And I mean, I'm sure the rest of the top 8 is as well. But I think, and I've said this before, Samuel Ihlenfeldt, he shows us something within ourselves. Like, he has been very, very open about what this experience has meant to him. And it must be huge. This bloke, it's his first Pro Tour. He's here at the top tables doing incredibly well, tussling with the biggest names of the day. And, I mean, I'm sure he's captured the hearts and minds of many people around the world. And Mike Sigrist, for, all the people that are backing him hard here, I mean, this guy's been held to account. Sigrist comes in the favourite by the widest margin. And it's great to see that, at all levels of competition, that these interactions can still take place and these stories can still get told, Simon.
And even this game is not over. You see Sigrist basically putting pressure on Ihlenfeldt to make all the right decisions here, to really evaluate this race correctly, even though he's favored, clearly.
No, he's making him earn it.
Exactly.
He's making him earn it. Absolutely no free wins against Mike Sigrist. We've talked about the caliber of this player, the caliber of his teammates, Team ChannelFireball, going in, in well towards the top of the team series at the opening of this season here. And Sigrist is at the top of that heap, amongst the other huge names on the team. Sigrist is the one who has stood head and shoulders above him this weekend.
I'll push your Thopter.
Make another Thopter.
And the Thopter's immediately just on the rotating door system here as one gets pushed off the ledge. That doesn't really work. Again, the Flavor Judge working overtime here as a fatal push shouldn't really kill a creature that can just fly
Off the
away.
plane
Stay here.
that we're
Oh, I
flying.
see.
Yeah.
We can take a pause or we can make it work. But
Um, so that was actually interesting. Ihlenfeldt forced another Thopter to be made, but I'm not sure if trading Fatal Push for a Thopter token is actually what he wanted to do here. I believe, even though it would have been the less forcing play, just getting rid of Long Tusk Cup is ultimately a bit stronger.
Just neutralizing that threat.
Yes,
Yeah,
because
I mean, essentially, Fatal Push there, red, destroy target 3 energy.
exactly.
Yeah.
And 2 of those energy are already back in Sigrist's pool because he kept the Long Tusk Cup. So maybe a little bit of suboptimal play.
Well, Aether Sphere Harvest is going to get in once again, and it looks like Ihlenfeldt might look to buffer the life total here. No. Picks up the pen.
No, he's looking to just win the game here with Hazoret's
So it goes down to 2.
activated ability.
All he has to do is discard a card. Sigrist isn't going to have an answer to this. 1, 2, 3 mana. And Ihlenfeldt forces the 5th game. Incredible stuff here from this fellow as Mike Sigrist goes down in game number 4. And just as we said, Simon Gertzen, we have Hazoret the Fervid, of course. She's going to come down. And the entire game all of a sudden came... was about this red god.
Literal game changer.
Absolutely. As we see Ihlenfeldt, he's going to retain some composure, maybe go and head off to the restroom just very quickly here as Mike Sigrist shuffles up ready for game number 5. Of course, all the impetus back on him now to stake his claim, take over this game here. Now we can have a look at what's been going on in the sideboards of these players. We've got a chance to get across it very briefly before, of course, Simon, but we can perhaps dig a little deeper now on exactly how things are going to shake out between Ihlenfeldt and Mike Sigrist first after the sideboards have been used. You can see Mike Sigrist's board on your screens around the world, ladies and gentlemen. And Simon Gertzen, what's jumping out at you here, my man?
You're looking at casting cost first. The cheap cards in Mike's sideboard are Magma Spray, Spell Pierce, Abrade, Negate, and I guess Appetite for the Unnatural isn't too expensive. Of course, Chandra's Defeat doesn't have a lot of targets against Mardu vehicles. And out of these cheap cards, you want the ones that are interacting with the threats of Mardu vehicles. And that's, of course, not the counter magic, but the removal.
So we're looking at things like Appetite for the Unnatural, a slam dunk against those vehicles. Abrade is a really, really nice flexible card because it's going to kill more or less anything you pointed at. But Magma Spray is really important in this matchup as well.
Yes, and what is actually important, a lot of these cards deal with multiple threats, but they only deal with one threat in the best possible way.
Yeah.
So, for example, you don't want to cast Abrade or Appetite for the Unnatural on Scrap Heap Scrounger. You want to Magma Spray it. You don't want or you can't cast Magma Spray or Abrade on a Heart of Kiran. Or no, you cannot cast Abrade on a Heart of Kiran, but you cannot use your damage-based spells for Heart of Kiran. So there, you want the Appetite for the Unnatural or your copies of Abrade to deal with artifacts. So all of this is somewhat dicey. You cannot just... You don't have this power of Fatal Push, which is just, I cast it when I need it.
You've got to have the right answers line up against the right questions. And certainly, these tools are incredibly effective at what they do. I mean, Magma Spray is the best answer to a card like Scrap Heap Scrounger. But, as you say, sometimes you're going to be put in a position where you have to eat it up with an appetite, and that's not where you want to be.
Yeah, where you're kind of forced to do it because it is the correct play. But now I've weakened my chances if this card shows up.
Yeah, well, Sigrist has come prepared for cards like that. Magma Spray, as a one-of in the board, 2 of them in his main as well, and we'd imagine they're going to stick around. You're not looking at other cards, Vizier, Confiscation, Coup, Nissa here, not...
Vizier and Nissa, absolutely not. Nissa is really weak when you are under that much pressure, and that's how you're losing the game. Unlicensed Disintegration, another problem card that punishes you for casting Planeswalkers.
Yeah.
I was actually debating Confiscation Coup simply because of the power of Hazoret that we just saw. This is not the matchup. This is not the Teamer mirror where it's about Scarab Gauze. This is not even comparable to Teamer against Ramanap Red, but you need a plan how to beat Hazoret.
Well, let's have a look now at what's going on in Samuel Ihlenfeld's sideboard here, and a couple of very interesting options, including Dusk to Dawn. But, I mean, what cards are jumping off the page at you here, Simon?
So, this is... Well, what's jumping at me is this Plains. I would assume that that's for matchups where he brings in Dusk to Dawn, just to make his mana a bit better. Maybe he wants to play a longer game and isn't afraid of that. But that's not too relevant here, I think. So I haven't talked to him. I don't know about his sideboard plan. But Chandra is historically very strong against Teamer Energy. It's great in the mirror, and you want that card. Pia Nalar, I think, is a really good option because you want to play a little bit of that value game that Teamer is so good at. And I do like Rampaging Ferocidon because Roller Virtuoso is one of the strongest cards against you.
Yeah, certainly a way to get some of those little bodies in the way of savage attacks with stuff like Heart of Kiran and what have you. But none of these cards that are really sort of slam dunk hoses, aren't they?
No, and that is actually the reason for why we see so many energy decks in the top 8. It is incredibly difficult to shore up your matchup, to improve your matchup after sideboarding.
Well, I mean, even a card like Solemnity, which is custom built to beat the Temur or the 4-color energy list, we don't see it in a white deck here, and it obviously just doesn't do what it needs to do. Temur can get the job done through a Solemnity.
It doesn't do its job well enough. It does cost a lot of mana. It's not good in multiples. There are many reasons why we don't see these cards make an appearance. Now, there is theoretically a chance that Samuel decides he wants to try to play a longer game where he surprises Mike with Dusk to Dawn. I don't expect that to happen, but it is something that both players have to be aware of.
I mean, we did see Dusk to Dawn played by Samuel Ihlenfeldt in against Energy previously when he was playing Rejuke and others in the Swiss here. So he could be on that again. I mean, you know, again, we haven't got a chance to catch up with him and find out what his plan is here. And it's certainly an option available to him.
It's also possible that he does it on the draw, but not on the play.
Yeah.
Because putting 3 reactive cards in your aggressive deck is a high price. However, we've also seen, that wasn't Samuel, but we've seen other players, they just brought in Fumigate against Temur Energy and completely surprised the opposition.
Yeah. Well, that's right. I mean, look, Ihlenfeldt would have come ready to beat Temur Energy, would have come ready to tussle with 4-color energy into this Pro Tour. But, you know, we look at his sideboard and it is sort of all macaroni and no cheese, really. There's nothing that you're looking at there and thinking, well, this is something that is just a stone-cold hose. I like the way he's built it. I like the land in the board as well for when he's looking to go a bit bigger. Chandra, Torch of Defiance, Dusk to Dawn. Duress as well, a nice way to shore up against those control lists. But
it's a well-known fact that if you have a chance to put a land in your sideboard, you should definitely do so. But Plains is usually not what you're aiming.
No, it's funny, isn't it? You normally do, you know, a utility land. We saw Pascal Maynard with the next level stuff. Of course, we had Hostile Desert coming out of the board from him, and I mean that's great to see. That can really catch your opponent off guard. But yeah, well, look, Ihlenfeldt's done well to build his deck in the way that he has. Mardu Vehicles was not on the radar of many people coming in, and I think he's capitalised on that. Simon, we discussed earlier the fact that Abrade has been on a bit of a downswing, and I think both Maynard and Ihlenfeldt have benefited from that. Main deck shatter effects have kept artifacts in check for weeks and weeks, and today that's not the case.
If you expected for Abrade to be the standard, the default at this event, that then coming here with Mardu Vehicles would have been very ballsy indeed.
Yes.
And now instead we are seeing Temur decks correctly trying to beat the mirror match, and Abrade is not the card you want for the Temur mirror. So we're seeing 1 or 2 Abrades, and that's of course much better.
Look at this. What a character indeed. He's got the old fan club over there and he's winking away at them. You can imagine many people rooting pretty hard for this fella here. But of course, Mike Sigrist has a very, very well-established horde of fans as a member of Team ChannelFireball, one of the premier teams in the team series so far, putting up a great performance alongside the likes of Genesis and the runners-up previously in the previous team series. And I know that Siggy will have his fans around the world as well. I'm looking forward to seeing how things shake out between these two because it all comes down to this. This is game number 5 between Mike Sigrist and Samuel Ihlenfeldt. What a pleasure it is to have your company, ladies and gentlemen, around the world, wherever you are, choosing to join us today. Here from Albuquerque, New Mexico, Ixalan, Pro Tour Ixalan has been a delight to cover. I hope it's been a delight to watch. It's certainly been our pleasure to bring you live, uninterrupted coverage of the very best of the game we all loved here from the home of Magic. You can see Dr. Frank Carsten, he's getting across the match as well. You'll be able to read his match report later on. I always love getting across the Flying Dutchman's literature there. It's fantastic to see.
Yeah, one of the most detailed and precise writers we have.
Oh yeah, to 7 decimal points. Absolutely right. I mean, that's how things shake out there. But right now, it's all about how things shake out between these two, and you can see that positive energy flowing between these two players. Sigrist, of course, will be looking for an energy of a different type heading in to game number 5. Looks like Confiscation Coup is on the cards, Simon.
Yes, and that's because he knows how he can lose this matchup. He has good sideboard cards, but there are certain problematic cards that he just cannot deal with. And also, it does give him a way to hedge against these crazy situations where he might be ahead on the board, but then we see something like Dusk to Dawn, Hazoret, and suddenly the game that you thought you couldn't lose is just completely out of control.
So yes, Confiscation Coup, a nice answer to the H-Dog there, and obviously a card that it's very hard to stuff up casting. I mean, it just is more or less mind control, and it does a great job at what it, at its intended purpose. But it's slow, costs 5, and if Ihlenfeldt can get out the gates like a greyhound here, he's going to put Siggy to the test. And Mike Sigrist already down to 6, and you can see it's weighing on him heavily.
But that's why the question of whether to expect Dusk to Dawn in particular is such a deciding factor here for these decisions in sideboarding and also in mulliganing. If you know the sideboarding plan of Samuel, then suddenly you can also afford to play a bit of a slower game.
Well, Sigrist is playing a slower game. You can see that he has got some pretty expensive cards in his hand. Scarab God, Vraska, but Long Tusk Cub is there as well. So he'll be hoping that Samuel Ihlenfeldt doesn't get the cane out of the cup and give him a damn good thrashing as we head into game number 5. But it all comes down to this. We're going to have one semi-finalist crowned before the end of, by the end of this game. Exactly at the end of this game is when it's going to happen, if you need me to be precise. Long Tusk Cub kick things off. And in response, it is a Heart of Kiran, Simon.
Once again, really powerful start by both players. I love Ihlenfeldt's hand. That just looks super scary if you're Sigrist. And I think Sigrist was stumbling a little bit, but maybe that attune with Ether actually draws him out of his troubles.
Well, we can see in his hand already, as you mentioned, those expensive cards, Simon. And a Harness Lightning is a piece of early interaction that's going to bridge him further towards casting the Scarab God, casting Vraska Relic Seeker. And once these cards are on the battlefield, it's very difficult for Ihlenfeldt's deck to get the job done. This is just a classic case of the energy deck going bigger.
Yeah, and so now we are in damage control mode. Don't take any damage. Deal with that Heart of Kiran. Thanks to, I think, Rootbound Crag will provide the red mana for Harness Lightning, so that doesn't even cost an energy. And then it's almost a tempo game where Mike is racing towards his late game threats, and he already has the island to cast. And
the nice thing here is that he's snuck out that Long Tusk Cub as well. You know, this is a tempo game. You know, we see this in Legacy. We see a Delver come down, and then everything is just put towards protecting that. Obviously, Sigrist has huger threats to follow it up with, but the fact he's got a bit of a clock, he's got some interaction, he's looking to be in a good spot to take Samuel Ihlenfeldt to task, especially given that this player is going to be neutralized by the Harness Lightning here.
Yeah, I fully expect that to get dealt with here. Actually, Ihlenfeldt is holding very flavorful backup copies of both Pia and Heart of Kiran.
Yeah, and look, it really was a flavor victory there with Pia and the Thopter crewing the Heart of Kiran. We do have the flavor.
I thought you had missed that first.
So. No, of course, I'm across it. Absolutely, it's my biggest priority, of course, when looking at this, and we do have a flavor judge on hand, of course, not only to take care of violations, but also to congratulate players on flavor victories. Of course, doesn't really mean much in the grand scheme of things when these guys are on the hunt for that 50K. We all know that they holler for that dollar, but I mean, you'll take them where you can get them.
And this is, we know that Mike is holding 5 and 6 drops, the Scarab God and Vraska, and yeah, well, that's pretty good.
Look at this. Mike Sigrist is beginning to pull ahead here because as strong as Ihlenfeldt's game has been so far, both flavor-wise and from a power level perspective, Mike Sigrist is really just going to take him to the cleaners. This guy's looking to take the burger out of this guy's bun in a very quick way here.
And that's what you need to do. You can't just hope. You don't board in removal spells to out-control the game. You board in removal spells to live long enough so that your bigger and better threats can take over.
So, Scrap Heap Scrounger coming down along with that Heart of Kiran.
And new cards?
I have 2.
And Sigrist with a land is going to be able to start seeking some relics. Otherwise, it's Scarab God time. Let me check the clock here. Oh, yep, look at that. It's Beetle time.
The only thing missing from Ihlenfeldt's draw was a 1-drop. If he had a 1-drop,
yeah, Toolcraft Exemplar would have really changed things there. But as it is, it looks like Sigrist here is in a great position now to start to deploy some of his late game threats, Simon. And this is what we've seen. Temur Energy, 4-color Energy, they have looked to go much, much bigger this tournament. They've looked to start to deploy threats that go... You know, Glory Ring is gone. We're looking at Scarab God. We're looking at Vraska these days.
Not because of this matchup.
No.
But it's just a fact.
But this is why they exist, and this is why we're looking at Mike Sigrist with a hand of Scarab God and Vraska.
Absolutely, and especially Vraska is a technology that wasn't really known until this event. It didn't make a big splash on Magic Online until now. We didn't see it at the World Championships or at Nationals.
Sigrist. An attack with a long Tusk is giving Ihlenfeldt pause.
And it's funny how you are much more likely to accept the fact that your opponent is getting 2 energy a turn than to let him draw an extra card, right? It's somehow a resource that you don't feel as bad about, but at the same time, it's actually a huge advantage that this long Tusk is generating.
And in many cases, I mean, that energy does end up becoming equivalent to, I mean, approximately a card.
You can convert it to an advantage without investing mana.
Yeah.
Right? So it doesn't even compare to cards in the traditional sense.
Oh, it's on a different axis, but it's still a resource that Ihlenfeldt is looking to constrain for Sigrist here as we see PNLR jump into the path of that oncoming long Tusk cub. Another one in hand, of course, for Ihlenfeldt, so, you know, not too much of a cost to be paid there. Now that Scrounger not able to block, of course, so that's why we haven't seen it enter combat. And a Whirl of Virtuoso to follow things up for Sigrist, so shields up for him as he continues to push towards this late game where he knows he's favoured.
So that's actually a very conservative play because he did have the powerful 5 and 6 drops in hand, but wants to just protect his life total. And with that much energy, I think it's 9, he does have ways to, for example, block Heart of Kirin easily.
Yes, indeed. Whirl of Virtuoso is just an army in a can, as we've seen plenty of times throughout the weekend. This marquee uncommon has pushed Teamer Energy over the top, in addition to other things like Rogue Refiner. You know, these are the role players, but they're so critical. I mean, this one, especially in aggressive matchups, can just shut the game down very quickly. And we see Ihlenfeldt respects it, unlicensed disintegration.
Yeah, and it forces once again the decision out of Mike. It looks like he is keeping a few energy around.
Yeah, well, I mean, he can't spend all of it because he needs that that Servant of the Conduit. He may need to use the Ether Hub colored mana as well, so he can't sort of just dump all of his toys out in the sandpit here.
Even just having that option to grow long Tusk Cup is valuable.
But look at this. I mean, those energy counters is effectively read, you know, in this situation, pay 3 energy, gain 4 life. And when you're sitting on a hand of Scarab God, Vraska, when you're sitting on cards that are going to overtake the late game, if you give yourself the breathing room you need, that's great.
Absolutely.
That's a fantastic exchange, especially if it doesn't cost him any cards.
And I'm looking at this board and I'm thinking about the Dusk to Dawn, and Mike is really playing in a way that he is not too concerned about that card. Yeah, of course, it will deal with some creatures, but it's a relatively symmetric effect. And the way he has sideboarded, if he lands a Vraska, then Dust is not even a threat because he has a 6-drop Planeswalker.
Yeah, that makes 2/2s.
Which
Very handy.
is better than 3.
Oh, mate, the sun can set on them and they're happy about it. They work best at night. So unfortunately, Sigrist has drawn a Servant of the Conduit, which is not going to be able to power out the cards that he's looking for right now. But it looks like it is Scarab God o'clock here. Love me do, says the Beetle, as he comes down here to start to impact this game immensely strongly. The Scarab God, I mean, initially the reason for the blue splash, Simon, we've seen it expanded to sideboard
the
cards
black
as
splash,
well.
yes.
So the black splash, I should say, we've seen it expanded to sideboard cards, but the Scarab God is just an absolute monster, a huge house.
Yes, even in a matchup as aggressive as this one, it will take over the game if you're allowed to activate it now. Once, twice, getting back a Whirl of Virtuoso, I think, is already devastating.
So Dusk now has been played by Samuel Ihlenfeldt. We talked about this card. We wondered whether it was going to be brought in. And look at this, a tidy little attack here from the player from Minneapolis here as he gets in with the Heart of Kirin. But the Thopter is left once the rubble has settled here. And the Scarab God back in Sigrist's hand, of course. He's not going to miss a trick.
No, and this is exactly the situation I was talking about. Mike sideboarded and played in a way where he was aware of Dusk to Dawn, and of course he can't play such that he never deploys any creatures that die. But who knows? Maybe he doesn't even have the full amount of Bristling Hydras after sideboarding. It's a good card, but he doesn't want to have Dusk to Dawn be a liability.
He may even have the intel from other players. We talked about the fact that players like Reed Duke, you know, were subject to Dusk to Dawn, and Sigrist's teammates may have seen that and said, look, he's going to bring it in 100%. You can bet your bottom dollar on it. You got to play around it. And we see the Scarab God come around. The curtains come up, and it's an encore performance from a TSG here.
And something that maybe not everyone is aware of, Mike Sigrist and all of his team and probably multiple other testing partners have been practicing this matchup since yesterday evening. So this is not a one-man just making up his mind about how to sideboard.
No, it's not the one-man band with the bass drum on the back. No, Sigrist is surrounded by a gang who have really put him through, you know, giving him the best support that they can offer. Ihlenfeldt will be no different. He would have had his teammates rally around him, looking to push him further and further into this top 8. But Sigrist, I mean, he's working with the best in the biz.
Absolutely, no doubt about that. And here, Ihlenfeldt is still pressuring, but he is facing this Scarab God, which will become active. There's also a swamp now, so mana is not really an issue anymore. Now Ihlenfeldt just has to be fast enough.
And he's turning the screws as well. Fast is the name of the game. He is he's quick and ready to go because Piana La is also getting activated. Her fire-breathing ability, the rubbish fire-breathing she has here, pumping up that Heart of Kiran. And Sigrist on the market for a fair bit of damage here.
Yeah, I think an activation is stronger than deploying Vraska.
Is that right?
Yes, it's just Whirl of Virtuoso is so good in this particular scenario where all you want is flying blockers.
Okay, and I mean, look, you know, we do talk about this. Planeswalkers need to either protect themselves or be protected, and a defensive card like Whirl of Virtuoso is in a great spot to do that. We could see Vraska come down behind an army of Thopters, and then she's going to feel much, much safer with that flying escort as her ship comes into port.
That doesn't mean that Vraska wouldn't have been a good play on this board, but you would have somehow left some equity on the table because you would have invested a card instead of just getting something for virtually free.
And the other thing here is, of course, you know, the longer that Whirl of Virtue as a zombie now is on there, the more advantage Sigrist picks. Even if next turn he decides to deploy the Vraska, he gets an extra scry, he gets an extra point of life out of Ihlenfeldt's coffers there.
And if I heard that correctly, he put the Scarab God trigger on the stack, then activated its ability just to have that extra zombie.
And we see this as the classic interaction, the upkeep Scarab God.
Yeah, I'm not telling a secret here.
No.
This is how very often you will play the Scarab God just to maximize all of it. Sometimes you prefer the information and you keep open the ability because you're not sure what to take yet. But in this case, that was definitely not.
Yeah, and I mean, you know, if you're playing with a card for a handful of instants, maybe you're looking to just see how the texture of the game unfolds. But right now, Sigrist knows. He knows he's not deploying the Vraska yet. He wants to get onto the board with the Whirl of Virtuoso. So now's the time to do it. That's exactly right. So, as you said, an open secret from you, Dr. Simon Gertzen, the Pro Tour champion. Alongside him, of course, my name's Riley. It's a great pleasure to have you as the quarterfinals begin to sort of come to an end here with both players doing the very best they can to scrap together a game plan that's going to put them over the top. But Mike Sigrist, I think he's holding the cards he needs to get the job done.
I agree. He does have to be a bit careful about a potential second copy of Dusk because he's making all these high-powered creatures.
Okay. Yeah, that's going to clean up things real nice there. Get the old Mr. Sheen out the cupboard for Samuel Ihlenfeldt if there's another Wrath effect like that. Although, you know, it means that the Thopters are going to stick around at least. That Servant's not going anywhere. But even the Whirl of Virtuoso bites the dust now because it's a
That's
4.
what I meant, exactly. You do have to be careful that it's not too much of a tempo swing.
Ihlenfeldt in a position to get some gasoline out of the graveyard as well. He can fill the tank right up now with Pia Nala in the graveyard as well as that Scrap Heap Scrounger. Although, actually, Pia Nala doesn't do much when there's one on the battlefield, and the Scrap Heap Scrounger comes back itself.
Yes, Scrap Heap Scrounger for sure. But when you're competing with the reanimation power of the Scarab God, that is looking relatively weak. Also, I don't think, for example, that Ihlenfeldt has the time in this matchup and this particular board state to use the Aftermath.
Yeah.
Dawn, and you're just giving 4-color energy too much time to have a board that's just insurmountable.
So fresh out the workshop now, a couple of more flying little mosquitoes take to the sky thanks to Whirl of Virtuoso. A few more Thopters as 1/1s come into play. We'll see what Sigrist is going to use them for. Their intended purpose remaining something of a mystery until the American commits to the line of play here. This guy, as we've mentioned, just an absolute house. A member of a team that's full of them. ChannelFireball is one of the early contenders for this team series that we've seen. And I tell you what, you don't get bigger names than the ones on Team ChannelFireball. Mike Sigrist joined by Ben Stark, Josh Adelaton, Martin User, Luis Scott Vargas, and PVDDR, the Dance Dance Revolution himself, Pablo Doritos. And these guys, 5 Hall of Famers amongst them, and Mike Sigrist is pushing himself further towards that distinction as well, Simon.
As did Seth Manfield.
Yes, indeed.
With another top 8.
Yeah,
which
another
is just
top 8 back-to-back.
Crazy conversion rate.
Yeah, he's done really well, and I know that when people are filling out the ballots next year, these guys will be in the conversation. Mike Sigrist moving to his 3rd top 8. Now, generally speaking, 4 is seen as the benchmark here. Matignon, Guillaume Matignon as well will be in that conversation with his another top 8 because, of course, Worlds 2010, was it when he won?
Correct.
I mean, that was essentially a pro tour.
Yeah, it was a pro tour. What he didn't win was the grudge match with Brad Nelson for Player of the Year.
No.
That was one of the most intense matches ever.
Well, we're now at a point where we may have another tense game coming to a conclusion here. But getting back to what Matignon was, I mean, it's been a long time since he's been amongst the top tables, and he was actually asking about the procedure, how that, because, you know, obviously we know he's hungry for that cheddar. He's on that paper chase, and it's been 7 years since he was at the top tables like this. So he was checking with the staff here as to how exactly he's going to rack up his fortune after. It's because all of the top 8 players, they get a hefty payday. Of course, if you end up in the first position, you're taking home 50 grand in cold, hard cash, and you're going to enjoy that, of course. But all the way down to the quarterfinals, you're taking home 5 figures. You're going to be very, very pleased indeed to do so. But right now, it's all between Sigrist and Ihlenfeldt, and well, the way that this pans out will, of course, continue the ongoing texture of the top 8. Coverage continues throughout the day. And ladies and gentlemen, if you thought it didn't get any better than me, Simon and Paul and Tim in the booth, Luis Scott Vargas making a return to the booth. The prodigal son returns to coverage after the once and future captain put up the numbers in the Swiss. But I'm sure we're all very happy to see him in the booth once again for the top 8. I know the hype is real, ladies and gentlemen, and toot toot, the hype train will leave the station once we get to the semis. But right now, you're stuck with us, the mouth from the south and the German doctor at my right. A great pleasure to have you as this quarterfinal moves on slowly but surely towards a conclusion. Sigrist still ahead here?
Sigrist still very, very clearly ahead. This time, just scrying, drawing his card, waiting with the Scarab God activation. And I think that's smart. There's no reason to rush it. And like I said, you might want to wait for what Ihlenfeldt draws or deploys before you make that decision.
Now, an interesting thing to get across here, I'm sure many of you around the world are very aware of the slightly different rules we have for the top 8 matches here at the Pro Tour. These games are untimed. These matches do not have a clock running to them. Of course, players expected to play at a reasonable pace, but I guess it means that there's more breathing room for players to make correct decisions, and it also means that we don't end up with things fizzling out to a draw. One of the top matches of this entire tournament was in round 6, where we saw Pascal Maynard play Pascal Vieira in the Pascal Mirror match, GPG against Anointed Procession. And unfortunately, I wish that one had been untimed, because what a game it was, what a match it was, Simon. But
Yeah.
right now, we will get a match result one way or the other.
Getting a draw in the quarterfinals of the Pro Tour is virtually impossible, and it's good because otherwise we wouldn't know who gets to play the semifinals.
No, well, I mean, I know many different sport codes around the world have different ways of coping with draws in elimination games, and one of the best ones actually comes out of Australia. In Australian rules football before recent years, if there was a draw in the grand final, they replayed it the next week.
From scratch?
From scratch.
Okay.
Even if it doesn't matter how it looked, they replayed it the entire match. It happened a couple of years ago. I think they've changed the rule since then. But right now, of course, we're not getting a draw between these two fellows as the action continues between Mike Sigrist and Samuel Ihlenfeldt. We've already talked about Sigrist, Team ChannelFireball superstar here. Ihlenfeldt, however, from Team Tower Games. These guys have got off to a flyer. Been put on the map by the top 8 performance of Samuel Ihlenfeldt. His first Pro Tour and his first top 8, 100% conversion rate. Better than PV.
Yeah, there's a unlock.
Navigating this combat step here as the Scarab God begins to get frisky. Toolcraft Exemplar jumping in the way here. Is Ihlenfeldt treading water here, or does he have a way out?
He is treading water. He is now in chump block mode. He doesn't have cards in hand. And even though he has 5 creatures on the board that Mardu Vehicles will be happy with, they are just no match for what Sigrist has deployed. And I think that Sigrist is maybe even further ahead if Dusk comes down. No, that's probably not true, but he is absolutely safe from a blowout by Dusk.
And look at this. He's got Vraska and Long Tusk Cub in hand. He can cast one of them. And he's just choosing not to. Like, he's sitting behind these Whirl of Virtuosos. He's got his Scarab God online for when he needs it as well. And, you know, we were talking about the Relic Seeker being one of the cards that's going to swing things in Sigrist's favour. He doesn't need it. Doesn't even need it. She's free to go and seek relics elsewhere here because Sigrist right now is all business, and Ihlenfeldt is hard-pressed now to find a way out of this particular labyrinth. Head on life, but you can't imagine that's going to be the way it's going to go for very long here.
The top deck was either Sphere Harvester, and I don't know, Riley. That seems like it can buy Samuel more time, but you are the match. You are facing the Scarab God, so more time just means more 4/4 tokens to beat you down.
More time for the Scarab God to do his thing, get up on the dance floor, bust those moves, and bring back all the creatures that he can, of course. And there's still plenty of fuel for the Scarab God.
There's
right
also
now.
the problem of the Scarab God trigger just growing out of control.
This is the other thing. I mean, in very real terms, Mike Sigrist never needs to attack again. You know, at the moment he's dinging Ihlenfeldt for 1 a turn and a scry, but with all the creatures in the battlefield and the fact in the graveyards, and the fact that Sigrist is actually pretty close from the old double activation, things are going to get closed out real quick. Even if we never hit the red zone again on Sigrist's behalf here. Ihlenfeldt is able to buffer his life total, or will be at least, with Aethersphere Harvester, but all the same, I mean, geez, it's not looking good for him. But it's not over until it's over, till the final whistle blows here. And Ihlenfeldt can still take to the skies. Sigrist is running out of energy to fuel those Whirl of Virtuosos here.
Go to attacks.
And Ihlenfeldt ready to start swinging the Willow around once again. And it's going to be an attack getting across in the sky. Thopterino coming along with that Heart of Kirin. Bit of an armed escort. And it looks like Sigrist is going to have to scramble a response here. What can he find? What's on the agenda here for Mike Sigrist in his third Pro Tour top 8?
That's correct.
He's dug very deep and he's worked very hard to get here. He's had an incredible performance all the way throughout the Swiss, coming in first, of course. Putting on a masterclass as well in many cases in the feature match area. Had to face down the likes of Owen Turtenwald amongst many other world-class players.
So here's what I want to see. I want to see the Scarab God activating, targeting Pianalar.
All right.
Because it will just give you that 1 extra Thopter. So it's almost like generating 3 energy, but you're also getting your 4/4.
Very good. 4/4 pair and a Thopterino as well coming along with thrown in for good measure. Order now and receive a free 1/1 flyer.
There's even the benefit of removing cards from Ihlenfeldt's graveyard. However, if Ihlenfeldt is aware of the fact that he can activate Scrapheap's Scrounger in response, then that actually doesn't work.
So what's going on there? Let's say that Sigrist puts a trigger onto the stack saying that he's going to reanimate PNLR. What are Ihlenfeldt's options?
Well, basically, he can say, okay, then Sigrist gets everything he wanted, or he can activate Scrapheap's Scrounger and as part of the cost, exile PNLR from the graveyard.
And Sigrist can't respond to that. Like, we can respond to it, but he can't respond to the fact that the card is exiled.
Exactly.
For example, if he had 2 activations.
Even if he had 8 mana, that wouldn't be relevant. So that's why we actually see Long Tusk Cup being... am I allowed to say eternalized?
I mean, look, we get the message. We certainly understand. It's a 4/4 Long Tusk Cub. It's a big boy. And now Sigrist, with the Scarab God trigger on the stack, is considering exactly what his move is here. What's his play?
And he's down.
Down to 3.
3.
Yeah. He's down to 3, and Ihlenfeldt does have a considerable air force. He's got the Thopter, he's got the Aethersphere Harvester, and he's got the Heart of Kirin here.
He also has Pianalar's ability to mess with combat significantly.
Yeah.
Is this maybe what Ihlenfeldt needs to get back into this game?
There are so many deep interactions going on here, and this has been a hallmark of this event. It's been unusual to have a Pro Tour format so late after the set release, of course. It means that we've seen a very established metagame attacked by many players around the world, but it's also meant that some of the deepest and most complex games of Magic that you'll ever see have been on your screen throughout this weekend, throughout coverage, because players know these decks inside out. There aren't surprises. They know the interactions.
And when William Jensen won Worlds, this was clearly visible. Playing against 23 tremendous players at this tournament, but just knowing the ins and outs of your deck, knowing every single nuance,
Many players would be in a position to overlook the, you know, something as simple as that scrap heap scrounge or interaction here. But Sigrist is not going to miss a trick. He's not going to miss a trick.
Oh, and he gave Ihlenfeldt the respect that he deserves because Ihlenfeldt knows his cards just as well.
So we have had the Scarab God trigger resolved. It looks like Sigrist was happy to leave up that mana. We may see Vraska come down, unless he's got other plans, of course, with that Magma Spray as well. Although he's got about a squillion billion mana, so he can do with it what he will.
But can he force enough blocks to not lose in the air here? This is the big question. Has he somehow found himself in a position where he's losing to Heart of Kiran and either Sphere Harvester because both of them are threatening lethal, and somehow he doesn't have enough energy, he doesn't have enough tools to work with.
So the first step here looks like it's going to be Vraska, the Relic Seeker. Now, she doesn't do anything about the Air Force, but of course, she can destroy one of these artifacts. So here she is. Boom! It is the Relic Seeker. 6-drop Planeswalker that is, again, finding more of a home in Standard. She's had a quiet inning so far, but right now, it looks like she's ready to just get the job done here, as something's going to be destroyed, and we'll see where Sigrist ends up pointing the finger. Aethersphere Harvester hits the bin. And now an attack. A couple more creatures coming in as well, Simon, but this is looking it's looking very tricky here for Sigrist, because he's leaving himself dead to an attack from the Heart of Kiran.
He doesn't have the fires that he needs. So there's not much he can do about it. What he does have is a Magma Spray, and the Magma Spray is hidden in a sense because he does he could get the red mana from that untapped Servant.
Well, he's even got the treasure token hanging out there as well. So what he may be doing here is looking for Ihlenfeldt to put away as many blocks as possible here, as we see now. An activation looks like of Scrap Heap Scrounger to activate the Heart of Kiran. It looks like Mike Sigrist might be looking for Ihlenfeldt to throw away enough of his creatures here in blocking that Magma Spray can take care of the one creature that would be left to crew the Heart of Kiran in the air.
I believe that's a bit optimistic. I don't think that's going to happen, if I'm honest. Is there maybe also a way to attack for lethal here? No, because Mike has held back, for example, that Long Toss Cub, which shows us that he wants to keep also ground creatures back for blocking.
So what's his answer to the Heart of Kiran?
Cards in hand? 2.
If Mike Sigrist is on 3 life, that Heart of Kiran
7, correct?
is going to wrap things up very tidily for Ihlenfeldt.
Ihlenfeldt just needs to survive here, right?
He just needs to get through this attack step, because we know that Sigrist has no way of preventing the 4/4 from coming in. Oh no. Oh no. This spells trouble here for Ihlenfeldt. The advantage bar bouncing around. We're going to see it now go back towards Ihlenfeldt as he's unblocked that Whirl of Virtuoso. But this is the line.
We have to count here, just like Ihlenfeldt does.
Now, Ihlenfeldt hasn't paid any significant cost by making the Heart of Kiran a creature, because that Scrap Heap Scrounger was not going to block anyway. So it's not a question of, by doing that, he's already sealed his fate.
But he is paying a price by blocking with it.
Absolutely. So if he leaves it, you know, he's not in a situation where, oh, I wish I hadn't tapped a creature to crew it because then I could have blocked with that. But if it blocks a 2-power creature, which it looks like it's going to, this is Mike Sigrist's way out.
So Ihlenfeldt is taking exactly 6 here. And he
goes to 1. Magma Spray on the Heart of Kiran.
Do you have any mana open?
Yeah.
And Samuel Ihlenfeldt. This discussion continues here. Samuel Ihlenfeldt has asked if Mike Sigrist has any mana available.
Not referring to this situation, but just the whole turn.
And it looks like a warning has been given out for slow play here. As this, I mean, it's you know, you've got to hand it to them. It's an incredibly difficult situation to navigate. But according to the judge, the tempo has not been swift enough here. And that was the way that it went. The end of the game, just like that, not with a bang, but with a whimper, an extension of the hand, and that's going to do it. That's the end of it.
I'm sure Michael Sigrist is upset about this loss. This was something happened there in Game 5. We thought Samuel was the one that might be nervous, but I think Sigrist might have made the final mistake of the match.
Mike Sigrist did not attack with the Long Tusk Cub. He thought it had summoning sickness. Had he attacked with that Long Tusk Cub, that would have been that. But as it is, Mike Sigrist has he's dropped out of the top 8 now after an incredible performance from Samuel Ihlenfeldt. I mean, you know, we saw him put himself in a position there to take every percentage point to win the final game of that best of 5 match, and he up against the best in the world, Simon.
I can't believe that Sigrist lost that game.
It was an incredible thing to see Mike Sigrist, you know, battle so hard, dig in so deep, and then just at the end, a fatal misstep has cost him everything there. But I mean, that game, poised on a knife edge, so much going on there, so complex, so much to get across. But ultimately, I mean, the thing that really impresses me about this is the fact that Sam, he got his head into the game in a major way. Yes. This guy, he calmed himself down. He found the composure that he needed. He breathed. He remembered that he's in this. He's a top 8 competitor. He's got a 100% conversion rate at Pro Tour top 8s, by the way. And he's just absolutely crushed it. Mike Sigrist, what a name that he's managed to claim.
It's almost like he grew with the opposition, which is very impressive.
Yeah, incredible character development there like that. We're going to break for lunch, ladies and gentlemen. Stick around because plenty more coming your way here from Pro Tour Ixalan, including, of course, the semi-finals. Luis Scott Vargas in the booth after we get through our lunch break. You're not going to want to miss a minute, my friends. But we've got to go to a break right now. Thanks for your company so far, and we're looking forward to more of it as Pro Tour Sunday continues. We'll see you back here in Albuquerque in just a few minutes.